Okay. Okay then. Hi everyone. So I think we took a short break from the meetups. I think we didn't have any meetups from last 1.5 month. So we are back with meetups again. Uh, Hope you are ready. So we have like 5 awesome talks today. Our first speaker will be Apur. Yeah, he will be talking about how to build in editors like Code Sandbox or Code Pen. Without any further delay, I'll get started. Apur, can you share your screen? Yeah. Let me add Apur to the stream. Yeah, I'll add. Yeah, Apur, you are ready.
Is my screen visible to everyone, right?
Yes.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Apurv, and in this talk, I'll be talking about how to build a online code editor. What is basically the system design? I've been figuring out a lot of things. I've been gathering a lot of information. What are the different patterns you can use in the line code editor, and what are the challenges you face while building one? So I'll be talking all about it in this talk. And so, just a small introduction. I am working as a software development intern at Innovisa, and you can connect to me on Twitter at _Purv_Taneja. And so, let's begin with the content of the talk. So, in this talk, we'll basically see the basics of bundling and compiling code, how to build a basic code editor, how to build a basic code editor, as in just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, no other frameworks and libraries, and how to compile code in browser, and what are the different security measures which any code editor has to take to prevent malicious attack on their code editors, and how can they make it more secure. So we'll be covering three things in this talk. The first one is whatever the user types will be typing in the code editor will be string. So we have to convert that string into a meaningful code so that our browser, our compiler will understand what is exactly happening. And there will be some piece of code which will be advanced JavaScript syntax. For example, let's say a browser doesn't understand what is promises. So we'll have to look after that thing as well, how to make the browser understand certain patterns, certain things which it cannot understand. And third is the most important point. We have to deal with import statements. So let's say if you write import React from React, so we'll have to make our browser understand what is React and how is it coming. How is it? How will it get the code base of React, and how will it bundle code? So these three are the main challenges we'll be covering in. We'll be seeing different patterns which can be used, and what are the drawbacks and advantages of each pattern, which we can use, which we can consider while building an online code editor. So first we'll talk about multiple options to transpile code. So as we know, we can't suppose if you write in a code editor const app and return a div, we know that browser won't understand what is exactly happening. We have to transpile our code, right? So there are multiple options to transpile code. The first option is we have a React app, which is basically a online code editor, which we are building. We send our code to the backend server. Now the backend server does something and transpiles our code and send back us the transpiled code. So this is the first approach we can use, right? And the second approach we can use is we can use in-browser transpilation. What does that mean is we don't send an external API request. Instead, we just transpile the code in the browser itself. So I can give you a demo what I'm talking about exactly here. So if we, this is babel.js, you might have come across this. And so this is the playground which Babel provides us. So if I write import React from React, so you will see there's no API request which Babel has made to any server. It just transpiled the code import React from React in browser itself. So this is what the second approach I'm talking about. We don't send any API request to the external server. We just transpile the code in the browser itself. these are the two different approaches we can use while transpiling the code. Now, after transpiling the code, we have to bundle the code. We have to make sure all the import statements are working properly, all the code is bundled, and we are able to get the final output. Now, this is the second challenge. Now, to figure out the solution for this, we have multiple options. We'll check all the multiple options we have. So the first option is we have a React application, which is a code editor. We send the code to a backend API. That backend API runs Webpack. Webpack finds a missing module. Suppose we have a code like import React from React. So Webpack has a plugin which installs all the npm module which it didn't find, and it fetches all the npm module from an npm registry, stores all the packages which it downloaded into a hard disk, and bundle the code and send back as the bundled code. This is the first approach which can be used to bundle the code. We'll see advantages and disadvantages of each approaches. And the second option is we it's exactly same as approach one, but the only difference we see is in the approach three. Approach which is The only difference we see is in the step three. If we see back, in this, we tell Webpack to fetch the modules which are missing and store it in a hard drive and then use them to bundle the code and send back the bundled code. This is the first approach. But in the second one, we are telling Webpack, hey, don't store all the npm modules which you're coming across in a hard disk. Instead, we'll give you a plugin. Instead, we'll give you a plugin. Use that plugin to fetch the code directly from the npm module. Don't download that piece of code. Just use that piece of code, bundle the code, and send back the bundled code. So what we're doing is we are not storing our code anywhere. We are not storing the React code on a hard disk. We are not storing any piece of code. So the difference between approach 1 and 2 is, if the number of npm module keeps increasing, our hard disk will get filled soon. We'll have to pay an extra cost for it. But in the second approach, we are not storing the npm modules anywhere. We are just fetching the code and telling Webpack, use this piece of code, bundle it, and send back it to the code editor. So this is the difference between first and second approach. Now we are coming to the third approach. In this approach, we are not using any backend API. What we are telling a code editor is use in-browser compilation to bundle the code. So there's no API request, there's no server involved with this type of approach. So what happens in this approach is, there's a React app, we have a piece of code, we send it to the browser, and in the browser the Webpack runs, it finds a missing module, it installs, it fetches the list of missing modules, it fetches the piece of code for that particular module, it bundles the code and send back. So the only difference between approach 2, which we saw here, and the approach 3 is just the backend server. In the approach 3, there's no backend server involved at all. So we reduce the cost of API calls here. So the only difference we can see in the approach 1, approach 2, and approach 3 is the number of API calls. We won't be building a different we won't be building an extra backend server for this step, and in this step we'll be doing everything in browser. So now as we saw let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of approach 2 and approach 3. So in approach 2, basically, which is this, the benefit we'll get is we can cache npm modules. Whatever the request we send to the backend API, we can cache them. So whenever a person requests again, so we can use the cached response to and send it back to the user, and it will be faster on devices which have which are running on slow internet. So this will be helpful. But the advantages of option 3 is, there's no API involved. We don't have to build a separate infrastructure just for running a backend server, compiling bundling the code and sending it back to the browser. So this is where we save one of the resources, which is a backend infrastructure. And this will be extremely fast comparison to the API calls. We will be just bundling the code in the browser itself. So there's the time we save is we can save the API time responses. So we'll be using approach 3 throughout this talk, and we'll be seeing what are the challenges we face and how we build we'll build a code editor. So we saw the advantages and disadvantages of transpiling and bundling the code locally, or if we use a backend server, right? So there's just one small problem, that Webpack doesn't run in browser. We have to make a lot of tweaks to make Webpack work in browser. There are a lot of complication involved to make that work inside it. So how will we bundle the code? How will we fetch the import? How will we fetch the npm modules which we have declared in the project itself? So there should be some different approach. So there's a different bundler which is esbuild. The other approach we'll be using is esbuild. So I'll show you what exactly esbuild is. You all might have heard about esbuild. It is extremely fast when it is compared to Webpack and other bundlers out there. As you can see, the response time, which it is showing here, that the time to do production bundle of 10 copies of 3.js library. So esbuild just completed it in 0.37 seconds, and Webpack is taking almost a minute. So we don't want to give a bad user experience to a user will have to keep waiting for the code to get bundled, and then it will be sent back to the code editor, and then it will run the code, and the user will be able to see the output. So we can use esbuild here, which is extremely fast, and we can customize it. We can use various plugins to make it more faster and robust, and make it as per our requirements. Now this is what will be doing now. So initially what was the approach was, there's a code editor which will send the code to the Babel. It will transpile it. It will send back to the Webpack will bundle it. We'll have the bundled code, and we'll execute it. But now what we are doing is, we are removing these two middle steps. We are removing Babel and Webpack. Instead of that, we are integrating esbuild. So there's no Babel and Webpack involved now. So it's directly like code goes to the esbuild. We'll transpile and bundle it there. We'll get the bundled code, and then we'll execute it. So this is how our approach is gonna be now. So how to make use of esbuild? So esbuild is almost, in when it comes to functionality type, esbuild is kind of similar to Webpack. Whenever it will come across an import statement like import React from React, it will start looking in a file systems. It will find, hey, I can't find, hey, I'll look for React in the file system and make use of it to bundle your code. But when we are building online code editor, there's no file system. It's just a browser. The browser doesn't know what is file system. How will it get access to the file system out there? So we have to somehow tell esbuild that there's no file system, but you will have to fetch the modules from an other source and use them. So how can we customize esbuild for that? So if you see, esbuild has section plugins. There are two we can customize. We have to basically make our own plugin and tell esbuild, hey, use this plugin whenever you come across any import request, like import React from React, import React DOM. So use this custom plugin and and resolve our request. So basically there are two callbacks which we'll be using an esbuild, which is resolve callback. So as you see the description, it says a callback added using on resolve will be run on each import path in each module that ES builds. The callback can customize how ESBuild does path resolution. So what does it mean is, when ESBuild come across a statement like import React from React, right? So it says this callback will always run when each import path in each module that ES builds. So it will come across the import path, which is import React. It saw that this import statement is there. It will start executing a resolve callback, right? And in this callback, we can customize how ESBuild does path resolution. So what basically this means is, we can tell ESBuild, don't directly look into the file system for the module which is mentioned in the import statement. Rather than that, we'll provide you a link where you will find the code for the particular module which is imported. That means don't just directly go and look for file system. It will throw an error because browser has no file system. But instead of that, we'll give you a path where you can find the code for the imported module which is mentioned by the user. So this is how resolve callback is useful, right? And next, when we got the path, suppose we got a path that this module, suppose let's say the module is React. So we gave esbuild a path. You can find React code there, use that piece of code, and then move further. So after on resolve callback, the esbuild goes to the onload callback. We can see onload callback here. Yeah. So what this onload callback does is, as you can see in the description, a callback added using onload will be run on each unique path and names appear that has not been marked as external. So what this basically does is, after every on resolve request, it goes to the onload callback. It will find a unique path. It will say, okay, I know I have to fetch code from this path. It will make a request to that path and get that piece of code from here, and we'll have that particular code, and we can use that piece of code in while bundling, right? So this is what esbuild does is, we'll see a pictorial diagram of whatever I explained, how this on resolve and on load callback work, so we can get a good idea what I'm talking about exactly. Okay, so yeah. So, as I mentioned in the on resolve callback, we'll provide esbuild a path from where it can fetch the npm modules. So if I said import React from React, we have to give that path. We know that there's no file system, so we have to tell esbuild you can get this path from npm website. Suppose let's say this is the website which we from where we can get the link to any module. So if we do npm view, yeah, so this is the link for React code. If I go to this link in my browser, I downloaded all the React code. So if I open this file and if I go to index.js, I'll see the code. This is what the index.js of React module, the complete React module looks like. Now, I can tell esbuild you can fetch all that you can fetch the path which I'll be giving you will be a npm registry link, and you can fetch all the details from there and send this path to onload so that it can download the file. But the problem is, if we try to fetch the code from npm registry website, which is if I do fetch to this, so this is the exact link which we got here, the link which has all the React code. So see, we got an error. It is CORS, cross origin resource sharing. So this means we can't access the npm registry website from any other domain. So this option is not, we can't use npm link to provide the link to the on resolve function. There should be some other way how we can get the npm link or source code for the module which a user has requested. So there's a website which is unpackage. uh, yeah. So this is basically a CDN for all the modules which are present on npm, and we can use this instead of npm registry, because as we saw in the npm registry, it throws a CORS, course origin resource sharing error, which means we can't access it from any other domain. So the only option which we are left with is unpackage. So we can get uh, all the npm packages files from here itself. So if I do unpackage slash react, so I got the same code which we saw here when when I downloaded the index.js file for React.js. This piece of code is same code which we are getting. Just a second. Yeah, this is same piece of code which we are getting from unpackage. So this means we can use unpackage in the onResolve function, and we can tell esbuild, hey, you can get all the code of React.js if you want from this link. It will give so esbuild will get to know that I have to fetch all the details from the unpackaged link. And on the onload function, it will actually fetch all the details, all the content which is present in the file, and it will be used for bundling. So basically, onResolve will just give the path from where it has to fetch. Onload will actually fetch all the path and will give it to the will fetch actually all the content of that file and will give it to the esbuild for the further process, that is bundling it. Now going back to the issues which we're facing, we already discussed we can use unpackage. So this is basically what the flow looks like. This is a code editor. We send the code in the browser. Esbuild finds an import statement. It sends that import statement to onResolve. OnResolve will find a path that, okay, I have to fetch, I have, if it's a React module, if it's import React from React, I can get React from unpackage.com. And on load, it will actually get the module from the unpackage.com and it will make a request to unpackage.com. Unpackage will send the React code to it. It will bundle the code, and all the bundled code will be sent back to the code editor. This is what the approach we have discussed so far. So just to repeat, as the code goes to the in browser, esbuild will start its process. It will start finding an import statement. If it's import React from React, it will see, yes, there's an import statement. I have to fetch the React module. So there's no file system there. So it will go to the onResolve function. OnResolve function will tell that, okay, if there's no file system, I know, but you can get actual code, all the code from this unpackage.com. So it will store this path name in unresolve. This will go to the onload function. Onload function will fetch all the content of that file, and it will send that piece of code to, it will bundle that piece of code and send back the bundled code. So this is what a in browser compilation and transpilation looks like. Now we have the bundled code with us. Now the browser, now we have a piece of code. If it's import React from React and we are using React in a code editor, it will know what this code is. It has properly bundled the code. It knows how to execute each part now. But now the main thing which comes next is, how do we execute it? Where do we show the result? Now we got the bundled code with us, but we have to do something with it. We have to show user what is happening in the code. Suppose the user has a code which says console.log, so we have to actually implement that. We just have a bundled code, we are not executing it anywhere, right? So what are the challenges, what are the next thing which we'll be looking at are how to execute the bundled code which we got from the esbuild. How to show errors. Suppose a user made some error while bundling or while typing, we have to show that error to the user, that hey, this is some mistake, you have to fix it. So we have to tell the user. And the third thing is, we have to prevent the user from manipulating the actual DOM. So what does this mean is, the online code editor is running inside a browser, right? If you don't want user to make some changes to the browser code, the code editor code itself, right? We just want to give user a separate execution, uh, a separate thing from for executing the code. We don't want the user to manipulate the actual code editor code, right? And the fourth point, which is, we want to prevent users from malicious attack. So all these things, all the things which are mentioned in this slide, the 4 points, can be fixed using iframe. So we'll see how iframe works and how it can help us in solving all the things which I mentioned in this slide. So yeah, so I have a small project which I made there just to demonstrate what is exactly iframe and how can we use it. So basically, I have a iframe tag in it, and the source attribute has a test HTML file. So the file is mentioned here itself, right? So this is a normal HTML document. I have mentioned all the like I mentioned a sample piece of code here. Now we'll see how index.html looks in the browser. So if I, oh yeah, Yeah. So this is what the index.html will look like if I run in the browser. So if we see, this is the h1 tag, this is the iframe. If we open this is the code. Yeah, this is the iframe document. This is the iframe tag which I mentioned uh, in this document. Yeah. So basically, we can use iframe to execute our piece of code. So if I make some changes in test.html, so if I add something like, if I, so yeah, I can actually see the changes. The text HTML is embedded in the iframe, and we can see what is exactly happening here. So we can add the HTML document inside our iframe. So what this means is we can tell iframe the bundled code which we got after esbuild, bundling, and transpiling. We can actually provide that code to iframe. We can tell iframe that you have to execute this piece of code. So basically what we'll do is, after getting all the bundled code, we'll we'll have a sample, we'll have a HTML file. In this HTML file, we can execute all the bundled code we got. So I can say that in the script tag, I can mention the file which we got, and we can execute this file in the index.html. Now, but talking about the security parameters, if we see, there are two execution frames here. As I mentioned, that we want to prevent user from malicious attacks which can happen. So there is basically a way to fix that. But first we'll see how is iframe, what are the configuration which we'll have to make to prevent that attack. So if we see, if I do something like window dot a equals to 100, so I'm setting a is 100. Now I change my execution frame. I, instead of in the top, I go to the test HTML file, the file which is mentioned in the iframe. As you can see, it is selected. Now I go to this. Now if I do window dot a, it is undefined. I have no access to the variable which were declared in the top JavaScript frame, right? But I can somehow access to the information which I mentioned in the top frame. How I can do is, I can use a parent object, parent dot window dot a. If I do this, I'll be able to access all the information which is present in the main top level execution context. So how can this be harmful? So let's say code pen. You might have seen people have different code pens. You have used them. You might have referred some piece of code there. So imagine there's in the JS file, there's a piece of code like axios dot post request https. Let's say this is uh, hackerserver.com, and it sends suppose you have a token. I know no one stores token in local storage. Most of them store in cookies, and there's a different way of storing authentication token. But somehow, yeah, so we do something like, yeah. So what will this piece of code do is, it will send, whenever we are accessing someone's code pen, we are accessing someone's pen. It has the JS, this piece of code in the JS file, and it will send the request to this API, and it will send the token in the body itself, which is really harmful. We can send all our sensitive data which is present in the browser to some malicious server, which is definitely not a good thing. So code editors have to take care of that. So how they can do is, so basically, as we saw that we can access the iframe parent property using parent.window.a. So we can prevent this using a attribute which is sandbox. What sandbox, or the default value of sandbox is allow same origin, but instead of that, if we keep it blank, if we don't provide any parameters inside this, and if we access this, um, let's say if I I'm on the top frame. Yeah, let's say do window dot c is equals to 200. Right. Now I go to the test HTML execution context and I do win parent dot window dot c. Hmm. Okay, just a second. I go there. Yeah. So we got uncaught DOM expectation blocked the frame from the original. So we are not allowed to access the parent context, parent execution frame. So what this sandbox property does, it prevents it from accessing all the content with all the sensitive information which is present in the main execution content. So this is how we can prevent our sensitive information. We can prevent the code editors to use the parent execution parent the information which is present in the actual browser to send to a different server. So the execution context is different. That execution context is different. That's why it is not able to access parent.window.c. Now this is how basically one of the ways you can secure your text editor. But we'll actually see how the code pen uses, what is the code pen approach. So what CodePen does is, whenever user changes the code, it sends the code to an API. It transpiles the code and send back to the code editor itself. But when the code editor receives the transpiled code, what it does is it reloads the iframe. It reloads the complete iframe. What it means is, then it fetches the HTML document from a different API. So the HTML, the file which is mentioned in the iframe, it is fetched from a different API. It says ki I have got the new transpiled code. I need to fetch a new HTML document. It hits that API, fetch the HTML document and send back. Now the code which we got transpiled code here, it sends back, it fetches the same code again. The code which we got here is just to tell the code editor to fetch a new HTML document. That code is not used anywhere now. After fetching the HTML document, it fetches a new API to send and ask for the same code which we got above here. It sends the same piece of code and it executes here. So what happens in this case is, whenever the iframe is loaded from a different API, the domain is different. The code it is not able to access the parent property which we saw. So either we can do two things. The one is, either we use sandbox property on a iframe, or we make a request from an API to load an iframe which has different port, different domain, or it's a different type of request. So what happens in the code pen case is, it is the different API which is transpiling the code, and the API which fetches the content inside iframe is different. So when the API is different, that's a different domain. That's why it is not allowed to access the parent, whatever the content present in the parent object. That is different. That's why CodePen approaches uses this approach by fetching HTML document in the iframe from a different API. And if you don't want to do anything, whatever I spoke about, if you don't want to bundle the code, you don't want to, what we say, use esbuild, build a custom plugin for it, what you can do is use Skypack. So what CodePen does is, it uses Skypack. So why Skypack is basically a simple solution for fetching all the JavaScript packages. What you just have to do is just import a package from Skypack. Instead of this confetti, you can do React, and you can start using React inside it. So this Skypack provides you the browser ready, browser usable piece of code, and you don't have to do anything. So CodePen works on this Skypack. If you go to Skypack website, you just import the code from Skypack CDN server, which is import React from HTTPS CDN Skypack React, and that is the executable browser ready code, and you can use it anywhere, and you don't have to do all the things which I spoke about. So this is how a code pen works. So we can check. You can definitely check Skypack for if you're building on an online code editor. You don't have to deal with all the bundling and compiling code. It will automatically provide you with the browser ready code. So this is how you can actually uh, compile the code in browser. You can get all the bundled code and execute it in the iframe and prevent the other users from malicious attack. So all the content is the references I've used is there's a course by Stephen Grider, which is basically where he builds an online code editor. I have referred Code Sandbox Engineering blog. Code Sandbox basically use the approach, the backend server approach. They send the code to the backend and then it sends the bundled code. CodePen Engineering blog. I also checked it. They use Skypack for bundling code. So I'm currently building an online code editor and I'm referring different sources out there. So these three top sources helped me a lot and in building a code editor, and I'm still building it. So you can refer to these three sources and can learn a lot about them. So that's all for this talk. I hope you really liked it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Sapur. Nice talk. Uh, so others, if you have any questions, you can ask from the on the YouTube chat.
Yeah.
Uh, I will remove the screen share for now,
Yeah, sure.
Apur. Yeah. So if you have any questions, you can ask on the YouTube chat. Maybe I'll read it out to Apur. You can also look it up. So I guess we have one question earlier. It was from Anupama. How does Code Sandbox solve for this
So
transpiling and bending?
yeah, so Code Sandbox earlier there was a complete different thing they were using. I came across their two engineering blogs. I don't know what is the updated version they are using, but the two blogs I came across is earlier they used to send the request to the backend API to bundle the code. So earlier that was there, and I'm not sure about the present approach which they are using.
Yeah, so we have one more question from Rahul, I guess.
Yeah. How can we show?
Uh, no, once again.
The pros that CodePen uses, is it better than sandboxing and iframe? Actually, CodePen and sandbox are like completely different when it comes to the features which they provide. So the approach is fine for both of them. They both have different usage, different things, so it's not like which approach is better. So they have different use cases and both of them are using as per their user base and features.
Yeah, so we have one more question.
How can we show the console inside iframe? How can we show the console inside iframe? I didn't get what is he trying to ask. Mm, how can we show the console inside iframe? Okay, just let me check what is he talking about. I haven't tried that before.
So it's good that we have Sid from Code Sandbox in the chat.
Yeah, I came
uh,
across this
yeah,
message.
thanks,
Yeah.
Sid. Uh, okay. Yeah, we have one more question from Sacha.
No, you won't get the course error from the unpackage. You won't get it. From the if you use the npm registry, the official website they have for npm packages, they'll throw a course origin error, but you won't get it from unpackage.
So
What are the advanced topic beyond framework and front end? So you can explore different things like bundling. That's bundling the different the bundlers out there like esbuild, and you can explore different things like security. Web security is one of the most important thing out there, and I guess these are the few topics: security, bundling, code, performance. You can explore beyond frameworks.
we have one more question from Devar.
Is using backend code approach you mentioned safe. Yes, you can secure them. There are different ways. You can obviously, like most code editors, some a few code editors use backend approach for compiling the code, and I'm not really aware about how they protect the backend part of code. I've not explored more about it, but yes, if I get a chance to learn more about it, I'll definitely answer this. But right now, I'm not aware how do they secure the backend part of it. It was mostly a front end approach. Okay. In the code sandbox, we have a console to log with the iframe. Can we do something like that? Okay, I'll just check this. I haven't tried using console in the iframe. But yes, if Code Sandbox is using, then definitely it's an HTML document inside it. We can embed it. So I think definitely we can use a console inside it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think Apu, you'll hang out a little bit in the YouTube chat as well, right? For a while.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can chat with Apurv in the YouTube chat for a while, and you can also reach out to him on the Twitter. Thanks a lot for the awesome talk, Apurv. Really
Thank you so
informative.
much, Karen.
We learned
Thank
a
you so
lot.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll start with our next speaker, Mega. She will be talking about the SWR. So let me. Hi, Mega.
Hi.
Yeah. So can
Am
you
I
also
audible to
share?
you?
Yes. Yeah. Can you share your
Awesome.
screen?
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. We
have
are
you added
ready.
it? Okay. Awesome. So, hi everyone. I will be giving an introduction to a new library called SWR. So, it's a library that is used. That is a collection of React hooks used for remote data fetching. A little bit about me, if you are seeing me for the first time. I'm a software developer at Hashnode. We are building a developer centric blogging platform there. Also, in my free time, I run a community named the Product Folks. And yeah, I am a side time indie game developer. So I spend some of my time on my indie game as well. These are my Twitter handles, and you can find pretty much everything about me on megapatek.tech. So let's start. These are the things that this talk is gonna revolve around. So this is a short talk which will act as a mini introduction about what is SWR and get you interested enough to explore it yourself. And I will be showing a small demonstration while tackling a real world problem and how SWR library solves it with just one line of code. And we will be lastly discussing what all various things are possible with this library. And why should you care about this library or even for this talk? So you have been using fetch, you have been writing APIs to fetch data and everything. But if you want to make even more powerful, API calls without even doing any, extra work, then this talk is for you. You can do a lot of things such as uh, dependent fetching, scroll pointer recovery, and all those things with this library. And lastly, like who this talk is for. So if you are like very new to React and just have started making API calls or have started making projects, SWR might be a little advanced for you. But if you know how to use fetch, Axios, and like how to make network requests, then you can like completely explore this library. It's very lightweight and gets you up and going very easily. Also, like don't be intimidated if you're like just a beginner to React. You can like still watch it. Like I also didn't knew all these things like up till 7 months back. So yeah, let's begin. These are some quick pointers about the SWR library. It's a lightweight library created by Version. It allows you not it so people are confused if it replaces fetch. It doesn't replaces fetch. It's an addition on fetch. So it's built upon it. So it allows you to fetch data as well as do some really cool things after you fetch it. So it helps you in fetching, caching, refetching data in real time using React hooks. Also, it's built with React suspense, so it lets your component wait before they can render and include the data. Also, it has some really great features, as I mentioned in the slide, such as focus on revalidation, scroll position, recovery, and everything. It also have a very good support with TypeScript, and it has a really good documentation, which is really short, so you can like simply get going with it. I have tried to not include anything that is already mentioned in the documentation, so that this talk doesn't look like the documentation itself. So yeah, as I mentioned, we will be dealing with a real world problem while making the use of this library. So just imagine a social media app, say it variantgram, so where only variants can post tweets and put comments. If you are not getting what I'm talking about, you can watch like the latest series Loki. And if you don't get it, you can like imagine any app, say Instagram or anything. And while you are browsing through the list of users you can connect with, you scroll through it and then you jump on the another tab. And while you did this, your best friend joined Parentgram, but you can't see him in your list when you headed back to the app. So, to craft the story in a very technical terms, the app Parentgram doesn't have auto revalidation when a window gets focused. You have to refresh to get the updated list. But yeah, uh, if we can remove that extra step of refreshing, it can be great. So yeah, let's build this. So let me open my code editor. So I wrote a this is a very basic React application that is being created by Create React app. Then I wrote an API, a very simple 14 line code where we imported Express and did all of this. And then we wrote a simple array of users. These are the users that are present on in the app already. And when I hit the endpoint, then I should see this array. And yeah, uh, let's simply run this. So the server is running, and yeah, we are getting this. Now, if I come to the React app, you are very familiar with this, no content React application. So this only shows us hello world. So yeah, there's nothing presented it. Yeah. Uh, so now let's use SWR here. I've tried to start with this just minimalistic template so that you don't get overwhelmed, like what all you need to know or do before using this library. So yeah, this is as minimalistic as it can get. So first you have to like simply yarn add it, and then I have imported it. And after importing, what we do, we simply for using this hook, we simply use curly braces to destructure whatever the hook will give us, and then we write the hook here. Yeah, like this. And inside this, we will pass the URL from where we want to like fetch the details. If there are like advanced people watching this talk, I'm getting going a bit slow. If anybody is very new to all of this. So yeah, if I can simply do const URL, and our URL was HTTP local, and this was our endpoint users. So in this hook, we will pass the URL, and we will pass a fetcher, which we will write now. So we can write const fetcher. And then and once we get the response, we will simply like convert into response.json. Again, this is the like bare minimum we can do with the response we get. And this we will this we have to destructure in say data, and we will might get error it also, so we will write error as well. So if we get error, then we should like simply display error as image one as right error. Okay, and if we are receiving the data, then we can simply write these are the frames you can frames on variantgram, and we can simply access the data here. So for accessing the data, we will have a conditional call just to see if there is a error or our data is just simply loading. So we will have a like a ternary operator here, and wait, yeah. So we will have a ternary operator that says if we have data, sorry, if we have data, then data should be mapped with user, and yeah, we want to like display the all the users present in our app. So we will show the users, and if it is not present, then we will simply show that it's still loading. Okay, I think it should work. Yeah, it's working. So it is showing us the list of people we can connect on Gram. So now the thing is, since uh, it's the normal React code that you run. Sorry, the lesson is in between. So yeah, this is the simple React code that you run. But what if, as we mentioned, that there is your best friend got added uh, on the platform, but you didn't get it. So when your best friend got added, he would have gone through the onboarding process and everything, and he would have got added to the database itself. We haven't used any database or anything. We have simply used an array. So like think of it as a database. So suppose my best friend Tim got added, and uh, wait, let's create a build first, otherwise it will automatically reload it. So yeah, let's create a yarn build, because we were in development server and it would have reloaded and shown this to us. And then we should type service build. Yeah. So now if we go to localhost 5000, this. Now I like edited the database. Now I will simply run the server again with node index.app. And as soon as okay, I should like show it again. Without refreshing, like this page didn't get refreshed, and just as soon as it comes in the focus again, this gets updated automatically. Like this didn't get refreshed as it was the yarn build. So yeah, This is basically how the auto revalidation works when a window gets in focus again. You might have seen that there are some applications where you got a notification on your email that someone has commented on your post or anything, but the browser that was already open in your system, that didn't show that updated comment, and then you refresh it and there is a long series of comments that comes up. So if you see how we use SWR here, there was only this normal, import and uh, use of hook here. If you want to use it with different components of your app, this is like one of my favorite optimization that you can do. You can simply use SWR config. So this is simply a higher order function that lets you, call different components inside it. So in your app.js, you can simply have use SWR and use SWR config from SWR library, and you can have different endpoints from which you are fetching your data, and then you can call your components inside it. For example, you had this higher order component above it, and then you are calling dashboard or different components that whatever you want to call inside your app. So this will make a lot of function. By using this, you can use a whole lot of functionality. For example, I showed you how it was auto refetching while I put this Windows focus in focus. By default, this is set as yes for this library, but you can set it as false as well, as this is something that suits your needs. Also, there is one more cool feature that is of refresh intervals. So you can set at this is simply known as interval polling. So you can set at what times the window gets refreshed again and again by fetching new data. So yeah, there here is refresh interval used again. So this is also very awesome to use. There is one more real amazing real world use case of this, which is authentication. So suppose you have an app and it is a multi-device app, for example, like an Academy Byju's or anything. And while your user logs in to your app from some other device, you want to log him or her out from all other devices. But with like the normal use of fetch, you can't really update that data without the user pressing on the logout button. You can do this, but there would be a whole lot of extra work. But this is also something that you easily do with this library. There are some other features of this library as well that are very worth trying. So one is error retries. So it fetches the call again and again if it receives error. So for example, like the error call I had here, and like I can use error retries with it, and it will like fetch again and again unless the error isn't there. And you can have dependent fetching. So what dependent fetching is you have some data, and based on it you want to like fetch some other thing, or you have some dynamic data, and once it's there, there is something that you want to fetch. So your one data is like dependent on the other one. So it is useful in those cases as well. Also, if you visit the GitHub README of SWR library, are a lot more examples present there. So as I mentioned earlier, I haven't included anything that you can find outside of this talk as well. So the GitHub README and the documentation are really good. Also, if you want to do conditional fetching, for example, here in these fetcher statement, I passed the base URL and a fetcher here. There are more multiple arguments you can pass here, and once could in the case of conditional fetching, what you can do is you can like conditionally fetch it if this is the base URL, and if you don't get data here, then like pass null or anything, you can like have conditional statements here. And also, like as I mentioned, you can have like multiple arguments here along with URL and fetcher. There are multiple options that are present here. There are like 9-10 of them. Also, yeah, these are the recommended readings, the documentation and the SWR readme. And thank you.
Hi, Michael. Uh, yeah, thanks for the talk. Uh, yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask now.
Yeah, I just saw comment. I didn't tell actually the full form of SWI. It's like stale while revalidation. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
if someone was wondering what it's about.
Yeah. So Siddhi is asking, what's your favorite use case for SWR?
uh,
Parent relations.
So I think like we in normal projects itself, like we have to make API requests anyways. So I think it's like a good addition, like not something that I can pick a favorite use case of, something that I will must have in my projects, just to have like features like this. If I'm like making a normal project, I might ignore this thing, that autofocus on revalidation, or there is this scroll position. Reveal is Relevel is there, and things like this. These are like stretch goals always, but with this library I think like it really makes the whole thing easy. And also the caching mechanism is very interesting. There are few things that are in beta, such as like mutation and everything. So I haven't like explored it myself like into depths, but yeah, that's something worth looking into. So there is a whole section on mutation and everything.
Yeah. So we have one more question from Satya. What's the difference
Okay,
between
so
dependent
the
fetching and
difference
conditional?
between dependent fetching and conditional fetching is this. In dependent fetching, it's like either you have some data with you, and based on that data your other things are dependent as well, like the data you will fetch next, or something you dynamic is already at there, and based on that you have some action that will be performed on it. That's more on dependent fetching. Conditional fetching is simple, as I showed you that in the statement where I used URL and fetcher. You can set a endpoint that if you get data from this endpoint, then do this, or use the other fetcher. So you can like customize, have a conditional statement in that hook arguments itself. So it's that. Also, if you didn't get it, you can like simply read it in documentation. But yeah, I tried my very best to explain it.
Yeah. So we have one more question from Saurav. Is it okay to
Is
use
it
it
okay
for
to
every
use it
API?
in an app? Actually, it depends on the app. Like if I talk about like side projects or like mini application, I think it's like good to use. It I didn't see any performance issues or anything with it. It has a really good support with the Vercel applications. If you are integrating your applications with Vercel and TypeScript as well. And if we talk about the application at scale, I really can't say anything about it, as but I think like it has a really, I read researched things about it, and it has like really good um, what to say support with Vercel. So there are like many enterprise applications running on Vercel that use this library. So I think yeah, it works on scale as well. So I think answering your question, I don't think so. It will cause any problem. We use it with every API request. Does there any special advantage? So yeah, I haven't used React Query myself, so I don't think so I can answer this. So yeah, but yeah, I haven't heard about it, so I like look forward to anybody else who can answer this in the chat. Are very free to do so. Can I have you used it personally? React Query? You're on mute. Kiran, you're on mute.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry, sorry.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can repeat whatever you said.
yeah, yeah. So I haven't used SWR and React Query that much. Uh,
Okay.
I mostly use GraphQL. So if you are using GraphQL, you don't need another data query layer, right?
Yeah.
But in non GraphQL applications, I look forward to try React Query and SWR. Uh, yeah, I think if you have more questions, you can reach out to Mega on Twitter, or you can maybe ask in the YouTube chat as well. Maybe we'll take just a short break, 5 minute break, and maybe get back uh, to the next talk. So maybe if you want to grab some water or something, you can grab it right now. We'll take a 5 minute break. Maybe we'll start back again at 3:12 or something. Our next speaker will be Vipul. Okay. See you soon again. Uh, Vipul, Vipul, you can share your screen.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
Can you
So
hear me?
maybe we'll get started into. Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you can show your slide screen so that.
Yeah. Just a second, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. We have time. We have like 2 minutes to three
Yeah.
minutes.
Just let me just start my voiceover. And then
Sure.
oh,
Hey, you are already getting comments on your new T-shirt, people.
Am I?
I guess I saw a tweet. I guess I think this is a new T-shirt,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's from CS50. Yeah, I bought it from the hardware store.
Yeah,
Actually, I
great.
bought it
So
two
is it
years
an?
back. It just shipped.
Mhm. Ah, great. Is it an online course?
Yeah, so
I
it's
mean,
the introductory programming course by Harvard, and it's, if I'm not wrong, this is, so this stat was from 2015, but I'm not sure if it's true or not right now. But it was the most popular MOOC course on edX at one point of time. So,
okay, okay, great. Yeah, then we'll get started then.
yeah, yeah, sure.
So, hi everyone. I hope you grabbed some water in this short break. Our next speaker will be Vipul. He'll be talking about journey into feature hacking. Maybe Sid might make appearance again. Let's see. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, you can
Sid,
take over,
Sid.
Vipul.
Sure, sure. So, hi everyone. This is Journey to Future Hacking. So, if everyone is ready, let's get started. So, a bit about me. Hi, my name is Vipul, and I work at Geeky Ants. Ignore the, don't tell my boss my designation. So, in terms of technical domains, my personal interests are in developer experience and tooling, and this talk is also slightly related to that. If you guys have watched SpongeBob SquarePants ever, if you know the, then you know the character Patrick, right? So I really like him. He, I think, is my spirit animal. And also, I really like sunrises because they always remind me it's time to sleep. So yeah, I really like sunrises. Cool. So, what is feature hacking, anyways, right? So, in the context of this talk, particularly, we'll take a system that we really like and is a broad spectrum with different features, right? And then what we'll try to do is we'll take out the interesting parts and try to recreate the core functionality in a sense that we understand. Okay, so the major thing that we do feature hacking for is to reliably guess or take educated guesses on how one must have implemented the whole project, right? But the core idea here is that you are not really sure, like you don't know what they used. There is no way for you to actually look at their code base. Okay, so that's how we do it. So we do feature hacking to make educated guesses on how they might have built the core product. All right, so what are we hacking today? So drum rolls, and it's UI dev tools from Sid. Okay, so let's this is a small gif, and if Sid is around, he'll really like this talk, I guess. So uh, let's explore UI DevTools a bit. Okay. So UI DevTools is basically a UI framework for a bit. Okay. Come on. Cool. All right. So I'm going to show you a few cool things before we actually dive into the topic. Okay. So if you wait for a bit, this text is supposed to make real things. So see, it makes like color change and stuff. So I just discovered this yesterday when I was looking at it for another time. And also like some like a small thing I'll show you. Okay. So if you go here, the cursor becomes a rock sign, which was like pretty hilarious to me when I saw it yesterday. So it has like these small bits all across the platform, and like you move and you will find more. So let's go to the part that really got me interested. Okay. So let's look at this. I'll open this in a new tab so that it becomes big and we can see it. All right. So if you look at here, just looking at the platform, this is the demo that we are going to use. So what he's doing is he has a component, and this looks like simple JSX, right? Doing some weird magic I don't understand at all. He is able to change the code in the browser, and the code directly updates in the code that he's written. Okay. Now, when I saw this for the first time, my emotions were similar to this. So I was looking at my screen, and then my brain blew up, and the only question I had was how. And then I asked just three more times. So I was like, how? And then I was like, how? And finally, also, and how. So I had no clue how he built it, right? And it was fascinating to me how could he achieve something like that. So today we are going to try and make educated guesses about this product. Okay. But first, we have been overwhelmed. It's time to breathe. So everyone take a deep breath. Let's move forward. All right. So this is my personal favorite topic, by the way, on this whole talk. Okay. So this is basically a comparison on if you're trying to build a product or if you're trying to build a feature, okay, or feature hacking a product. So if you're building a product, you have actual users and stuff, right? And they report bugs and stuff. So you have to fix them because maybe they're paying you or maybe you want to make your product successful. If you're feature hacking, it's just a toy, right? You can play around with as much as you want. When you're bored, just leave it. When you're building a product, it's built for a wider audience. All right. So you have to cater to a lot of different people and a lot of different use cases. Right? If you're hacking a feature, you're doing it so that you can feel good about yourself. You can feel smart, like, okay, I did something smart. And of course, Twitter. Like you're supposed to post it on Twitter, and that's how you're doing. We all know that. No shame in that. You know, I know, we all do that for that. Good. So, right. And also, if you're building a product, right, building a product comes with a lot of edge case handling and also corner cases that you have to deal with, right? My favorite part about feature hacking is if you have a bug, right, that keeps bothering you, just stop producing it. You are the sole user, right? Write down the steps that replicate this and stop using that whole process. Try a different workflow. All right. So cool. Let's hack. All right. So if I go to my browser real quick, right. So first of all, to hack something, you'll have to go to hackertyper.net, right? And then you can start hacking. So let's hack a bit. All right, this is pretty cool. I don't understand one single line of this. Looks like PHP or what? All right, enough. Cool. Now let's go to NSA's website. Going to hack NSA, guys. Right. So you go to console. I'm going to say document. Right. So document dot body. This is going to be cool. Okay. No, not text. I want HTML. Oh no. Okay, cool. Great. So all the data is gone. Let's write something now. Yo. Pretty cool, right? We just hacked NSA. Guys, all right, fine. No more bad jokes. Let's go back to the. All right, cool. So we just hacked NSA, and since we just hacked NSA, we have a couple of things we need to do. So the important pointers, okay. First of all, let's add a new section on your resume and just mark that you hacked NSA at one point of time, and you get bragging rights. Then you'll have to post a screenshot on Twitter to make it like legit, because then your recruiter will ask you what's the proof, and then you can show them the Twitter screenshot, and then you'll be good. Then go to LinkedIn, add the info section in your job section, and find a job that pays you a lot of money. Right. So these are the steps anybody can do. All right. But the next step is just for me. You guys shouldn't try this at home. Like, this is a proper disclaimer. Don't try this at home at all. So we try to hack Tesla, okay, because we want to get Elon Musk's attention and hope one day he'll adopt this. Now, this is just for me. Don't do it at home. This can be really risky. All right. No more bad jokes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Fine. God, why are you behaving like you paid for this or something? Did you pay for this? But wait, the important question is, how do you have money and stuff? Didn't you invest all your money in crypto, and are you part of the being broke club? Did you not? Did you guys keep your money and not invest it in crypto? I don't like you guys anymore. No more jokes for you. I'm just kidding. Let me show you something cool. All right. So if you go to my browser and we close all this nonsense that we've been doing, and if you go to my local host and go to my port 5000, I'm going to build the DevTools that said build, okay? And we are going to do it feature by feature. So let's go to step 0. And in step 0, we create a right navigation. Cool. We got a navigation on the right. This is pretty nice, right? We're making progress. We've already got the right navigation. What else would one want? Maybe add a few fields also, text, color, nice. We're making good progress here. I'm not sure if you guys appreciate this enough, but we are making some progress here. Let's go to step 2 and actually make some progress here. So what I've done at this point of time is, and we'll see it in code, the browser first, and then we'll dive into the code and understand this. So if I click here, right, my fields on the right get populated automatically, and I can toggle between these as many times as I want, right? And appropriate things get filled up. So let's look at the code now and try to understand what's going on, right? So we'll go to step 0, then step 1, step 2, and build. So each step builds on top of the other one, okay? So that's why we are going to dive into atomic units and only understand the bits that I change in each step, okay? So here, I just have a plain simple HTML5 document, right? It has a CSS file, which is actually causing the sidebar to appear. So let's just look at that quickly. So just my box model, then position absolute slide, and then for my slides for my fields, okay? So that's what it is. Now, if I go to step 1, that's the same model. I've just added some inline styles to some elements, right? So given them colors, right? And then added these fields. So these two form fields I've added, all right? That's how I started. I legit started like this, okay? Then I went to step 2, and then I thought, you are really lazy, right? There is no way you are going to write event listeners for every single thing. So I gave my container an ID, and I bound my click listener on the main container, right? So all the elements that are inside my main container, whenever they get clicked on, single event fires, right? So that's associated on my main element. Good. Now we'll talk about this why it's needed, but just forget this mentally for a bit, right? Then to find the appropriate element, we go to the event object and we get the target element, right? Then we create two functions, okay? So one is for the color change listener, and the other one is for the inner text change listener, all right? And yeah, the cat's out of the box. It's changing the inner text. So that's it, right? So we write those two listeners, right? And then what we do is we have IDs for these inputs as well, right? So ID here and ID here, all right? And then we tell them, okay, so the values are the values that are currently on the style object and others uh, on the element, and we assign the values there, right? And then we add these click listeners. Cool. So now let's look at why do we need to remove these, right? So let's go back to the code and let's see, right? So if I refresh this, right, nothing shows up. Cool. When I click this for the first time, two event listeners were assigned on these, right? Now if I click again, those event listeners are still here in some background somewhere trying to do their job, right? But we have assigned two other listeners, right? So if I try to change this property now, say I make it purple, right? And if I change this color, so if I say hello world, right? And if I go back here and I say hello world, right? Currently it's changing the appropriate properties. Why? Because I've removed the listeners when I start this call again. If I remove this, what it'll do is it'll keep the listeners around. So I clicked on the first one, clicked on the second one, trying to change it. So it changes for both of them, right? Because the listeners for both of them still exist, right? So what I have to do is I have to remove that listener once I'm done. All right. So this is just some housekeeping stuff I'm doing. Good. Now let's go to the interesting bits. All right. And for this, what I'll do is I'll make my code window. So what I'll do is I'll extract this out, and then what I will say is make them come side by side. Right? So why don't you go to the right? Alright, and so the browser isn't here, right? It's here, but it's in full screen. So let's make it go to the left, or make it to the right, or whatever. Cool. So we have the code on the right, and currently my hello world is purple, and which is not reflected because I'm in step 2, and I forgot to go to step 3. All right, cool. So here my current h1 element has a color purple, and the inner HTML text is hello world. Right? Let's do something. Let's click on hello world. Right? I don't like purple. I like red. Right. Did you notice that I said red here and my code updated appropriately, right? Let's try to do it again. Maybe I like orange now. You see that? You catch that? Maybe try to change the text as well. Right. I spelled it all wrong, but you might get the sense of it, right? So I am able to get the functionality right. Just don't know how it's working right. This is for me. This was the point when I said, okay, I've replicated what Sid didn't do it, but in a fun environment, right? In an environment where I was able to directly update my code, the source of truth of my application from my browser. Right? That's what I wanted to do. So let's look at some details, like how this works, right? So first of all, what I did is, so a little bit of background, right? We built it in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? Now let's start making educated guesses about Sid's product. Okay? So first of all, what blew my mind initially was I thought that since he's using JSX, right, changing an appropriate value in JSX will mean that for one, he has to transpile his code into HTML JavaScript, right? Then he'll have to update it, make it go a round way again, and then convert the new thing into JSX and replace it there, right? So that was in my initial thought. But we are not doing anything like that in our application. How is that possible? Right. So that's possible because we are using what one might call the assembly of the browser already. Why the assembly of the browser? Because these are the languages that my browsers understand natively. What I'm using is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and my browser understands this natively. Apart from understanding these natively, it also thinks in these languages, right? When I make a DOM change, my DOM API is just a medium for me to interact with my HTML and CSS right in the browser via this language called JavaScript, which we love and do all the time, right? So my advantage in this feature hacking domain is that I'm speaking something my browser understands natively. And on top of understanding is natively, it also talks to the system in this particular language itself, right? Whenever I do some change in the DOM, it's reflected in terms of HTML and CSS or an extension of it at the most, right? And then all those APIs, the interaction that I do with that API, the interaction with that assembly language, right? The DOM API so-called is already provided to me, right? So if you think about this in terms of a parser or a transpiler or something like that, right? A browser is basically the best HTML, CSS, and JavaScript parser that was written, right? So your platform that you're using and we are using in this current scenario is actually a transpiler. We don't need an extra transpiler, compiler, and stuff like that. We don't need it because our platform does that inherently for us. And it has been under development from a long, long time. So it's the best that's out there, right? So we are going to abuse that in the sense that we are going to tell browser, hey, do one thing. I'm going to tell you to change a specific property. Go ahead, change that. Browser will go and change that for you. Cool. DOM interactions, we know them already. But the great part is the language we were supposed to write it in, the browser also writes in that language. And so I can do this clever. All right. So I can tell my DOM, hey DOM, can you give me access to your DOM element? I'll even say please if you do that. All right. And then we just take the whole inner HTML. Because my browser is my transpiler, my instructions are in a assembly first language. It's the core that's my browser speaks, right? I can simply say, whatever changes I've done till this point, just give me the whole HTML that you created for me. That's the beauty about this, right? And then I just write it to a simple localhost server. If we look at my server code, right, I'm going to hide one line, and apart from that, so I'm going to hide this. And apart from that, if you look at it, it simply looks like Express, right? So I'm doing a bit of Node and a bit of Express. So let's go through line by line. So my port number, if this thing, just imagine this nav thing. Just imagine if it's I imported Express as nav. All right. For now, let's imagine it like this, right? So if you have written Express ever in your life, this code seems really familiar, right? And then there is just simple write file server, which writes file to the code, right? Now this nav business here, it's a library that I wrote. So basically, what it is tiny Express which has no dependencies, right? So I didn't like Express back in a time because it had too many dependencies. So I wrote a Express like library sort of, and it's called NAF. The I use it, don't use it, because since I wrote it, I can patch it at any point of time, and it's not ready for production, but it's on npm, so don't use it. But basically, what it does is once you create the app, it mimics every single functionality that's there in Express, but doesn't use any external dependencies. So yeah, that's what we are using here. All right, cool. So now, since we understand what wizardry we are doing, let's go and take a look at our slides. Right? Do we have anything extra? Cool. Uh, So, was it good enough? For me, I was satisfied at this point of time, right? But one thing I was really curious about still is how Sid did it, right? Because he was doing that whole JSX to HTML transpilation, introducing a new abstraction layer in between. So what I did is I tweeted this to Sid. Okay, I took the screenshot. I tweeted because remember, whenever you do something cool, post it on Twitter. So I tweeted this to Sid, and he was really kind, and he let me look at his code base. So he added me as sponsor to his code base, right? And I was able to look at his code base. So what did I found? Okay, so before we look at Sid's code, right, let's create some hypothesis of our own. Because now the whole point of feature hacking is that we are going to make educated guesses. And let's start making those educated guesses now. So the first limitation that we have is that we completely disregarded the whole notion of modulation, right? Because how our system works is basically if you do any changes in the styles property or anything like that, right, inside DOM, they are going to be added to the HTML style attribute, right, which defeats the whole purpose of modulation. And we don't really want to do that. I personally like modulation a lot. I don't know about you guys. If you don't, you're weird. But yeah, whatever. I'm not judging. Yeah. So we defeat the whole purpose of modulation, right? But Sid didn't. We could clearly see in his demo that there was a component that was in isolation, right? And the component was getting updated in isolation. So that was interesting. He didn't, we did. So how can we change that if we can, right? And secondly, the code patching that we are doing is extremely dumb, right? Unselective and uninteresting, really, if you think about it. What we are doing is we have written an echo server which just takes the code and puts it in a file, saves it, and the B does gets done with it, right? So nothing interesting about that. But I'm really curious how he might be doing this, right? And finally, can we make it do more, right? Okay, I am satisfied with what I've achieved something, but can we make it do more? So can we do make it do more? Yeah, we can actually. So first things we can solve about this is we can handle more properties. Okay. So how you go by that, doing that, right? So if you do window.get computed styles for an element, you'll get all the CSS properties that are on that element. Currently, we are just supporting colors. Using this, you can support all the properties, right? So if you just on a select of element, as we saw, get all the properties, attach the listeners for that, create appropriate elements for those, then you can handle a lot of properties. You're getting closer. In our system is usable now, right? Now say, and also the thing with that using get computed styles is you can get element specific properties, right? So if you have a marquee tag that has a specific CSS property that say a paragraph doesn't or something like that, image doesn't, right? So you get access to those. So these will be element specific, and the platform will be more catered, and it will start going on that journey of being a product slowly, right? Okay, so make it do more, right? Currently, we found a way to add more properties, but how do I like make this do even more? Okay, so one thing was we can explore different properties in sections, and that's all fine, right? Uh, cool. So one thing was that Sid was able to give them property values they can choose from, right? So say if there was a property like display, right? So we know it's either going to be block, list, none, etc., etc., right? So could we make that thing come to our project, right? So listen, I'm lazy and I was not going to do it by hand. So I Googled and Googled and Googled, and then I found this interesting thread on Stack Overflow. So basically, So one thing was, when I googled it, right, I found interest in the thing I was doing and someone else was also doing at a point of time, right? So I found that okay, there is an interest for this. Cool. So I found this interesting thread, and it stated that so browsers don't expose these properties to us directly. I don't know why. If you ask me personally, I think they should, right? But they don't. They use them internally. But there was this interesting thing that existed once in time called Firebug, all right? And if you don't know Firebug, you just don't talk to me. But yeah, if you know that, and if you can do the math of finding the appropriate repository Firebug lives in, then this guy who was really helpful wrote the exact file path. Okay, so he was like content Firebug lib.js. Go there, you'll find all the properties. But the fact is that they might be old because the CSS specs changes, right? So you will get a starter and a great starter because Firebug used to use it, right? And then you can add more properties. So if you are going to do that manner, then I'll save you some time. All right. Now let's look at the original code, and we are done because I'm not going to show you the original code, not at all. Cool. So what did we learn from actually looking at Sid's code, right? So one thing that I'm going to clearly tell is I didn't look at his code extensively. I looked at in brief. I looked at the points I was interested for. I looked at other things that I was really curious for, not for like finding all the intricate details. So let's look at my perspective and my hypothesis if they came true or not, right? So first of all, I found Sid's like code really like cognitively pleasing. It was just structured well. I really liked it, and big shout out to Sid for like letting me look at his code. Correct. So secondly, I found that he's using this package called JS Code Shift, right? It's a library that Facebook wrote some time back. I don't know when. I didn't actually check. I should have, but I didn't because I'm lazy. Yeah. So basically, they're using this thing called JS Code Shift, all right? And JS Code Shift is basically doing the whole heavy lifting of changing the code, all right? But that comes with some other things, right? So it has to be told that okay, the products, the things that you're supposed to look for start from this line to this line, and there are some meta information that it also needs. So one thing that I personally learned was I found out a new library that I might use in my future sometime. So that was great. And then I also found out that he was not personally handling this. He was deferring that to a whole new library, which was cool. He was focusing on a different problem at all, right? Cool. So then the React component, right? So we saw that he uses this particular dev tools component that you have to wrap your whole components in. If you didn't, if you go to the platform, you will see, right? So I was really curious why they'll have to do that, right? And I found this part very clever and extremely smart, right? So we just heard, right, that JS Code Shift needs some meta information, right? So what he does is basically he uses that component as markers. Okay, so everything inside that is a part of DevTools now. Okay, and the sidebar, which is fine, but basically the interesting part is he uses that as markers, and he has a Babel plugin which basically transpiles that code and adds meta information about line numbers and stuff to the whole code, that's the subtree that's inside there, right? So that JS Code Shift could smartly change those things when they are changed automatically, right? So this was the part that I found really clever because he was using that component for that sort of transformation. I was really cool. So, but at the end of the day, the thing is the browsers don't understand JSX natively, right? They don't. It's just a fact, right? And that's why he's using Tailwind, right? So the product is called Tailwind DevTools, right? Because if you go and do the thing that we did with inner text, that's not really possible, right? Because with JSX, inside an element, there could be any number of elements, right? But in our system, since we are using HTML, if there is a subtree in a tree, then we can reliably change it because we are not changing it at all. We are just handing that whole business to say the browser, right? And the browser does it on its own. So we are not touching that business at all, right? So that's why he uses Tailwind. And with Tailwind, the thing is that you're only changing property values of a single prop, which is called class name, right? So that's why he has a reliable solution because he only has to change values of a single prop, which is class name. And Tailwind being a utility first library fits right into this picture, right? So these two things work like in a very tightly coupled way. but they work so nicely that you don't even notice that. You see all the changes happening in the code as well, but all the changes that are happening in the class names, and the only thing that is actually changing is the class name property, right? So that was really interesting when I found it, like, but we are using HTML, right? And using HTML has its own perks, right? It has its disadvantages for sure, but it also has its own perks, right? So let's look at another example I created, right? So what we'll do is I'll go back, all right, and I go to step 4. Okay. Now don't need this because all the interesting parts are done. So I added this "I'm feeling lucky" button. All right. So what I'll do is I'll add a paragraph tag. Okay. And if I press enter, what I'll do is if I go here, inspect in my body, in my main element, I was able to create an arbitrary element. All right. This is sidebar. Sorry. I was able to create a new HTML element. That's not possible with JSX at all because of the abstraction that we created, right? And the funny part is it's not limited, right? So I added a Easter egg. If you type div and press enter, right, it adds my favorite tag in the DOM, and it does this. So it creates a bouncing tag, and this is pure HTML, and this is done by my favorite tag, and it's marq. So if you guys don't know this, you are not cool. So yeah, whatever. Cool. So, all right. So this is it, right? So the extension that HTML gives us using the so-called assembly of the browser, right? You can do random extensions to your platform, right? With SID solution, we saw how limiting it was because the JSX2 whole HTML transpilation took a whole lot of abstraction out of it, right? And then adding these random nodes and converting them to valid JSX will be a bit of a pain, right? And then you'll have to do a lot of extra manual. But in our case, this comes naturally because we are using the core abstraction that the browser speaks. The whole core idea for this to succeed is that the browser speaks HTML, and it also thinks in HTML, right? And that's how we can do this stuff, right? So using HTML has its own perks, all right? So one is we can do extend our original solution, but also deviate from the product that we were initially feature hacking already. Because the language that we are speaking and the browser speaks has some direct to one-to-one mapping, right? So we can do arbitrary extensions to our platform, right? And since, as I said, we are talking in the so-called assembly of the browser, we can do random extensions, right? And this was just one example. You could do any amount of things, right? You could do a fancy, say, insert this on top of this, insert this on what this is, maybe use a proper modal and say what you want to go inside this element, etc., etc. So the extension is only limited to how you can think about it. HTML won't restrict you at any place, right? And since there is a one-to-one mapping between what you can do with the DOM and what you can do in HTML, there is no literal problem. You can extend it whatever way you want. Like there is no bound to this. There is you are not going to have a come to a point where you're going to be limited by the potential of your platform because you're speaking the native platform language, and that's really cool about HTML, right? Because with HTML, for to add that, right, I only had to if I can find my code editor, which I can't, it seems. All right. Okay. This is embarrassing. Wait. All right. So if I go to step 4, right, the only extension I had to do was I added a button. All right. Then I said, if these are just sanity checks, ignore those. Then I added a prompt. Then I created an element. Then I gave it appropriate heading, and then I just merged it. And also because I did that, and my wrapper writes to my file as I say, because HTML, the browser speaks what I speak. I also get this in my code, right? So you could do arbitrary elements. You could like write whatever you want to write in here. Even HTML elements, just not the properties, but the HTML elements also, and maybe some JavaScript also. I'm not sure. Maybe. So yeah, HTML has its own perks, and yeah, that was the end. So thank you, and yeah, that was the talk.
Yeah, nice talk, people. Uh, yeah, so if you have any questions, you can ask now. So do you have the code for the talk somewhere?
Yeah, I'll put it. Yeah, I'll put it on GitHub. It's not there currently, but I'll.
Great. Yeah, I think then I think we don't have the questions yet, but if you have any questions to people, you can maybe continue asking in the YouTube chat or reach out to him on the Twitter. All the speakers' Twitter links are there in the YouTube description, so you can connect with the speakers and continue the conversation there. Yeah, thanks, people. Yeah, really nice reverse engineering.
Thanks.
uh, yeah, great. So then we'll okay. Yeah, if you want to take one generic question,
Yeah,
I
sure.
can put it out. So this is not
So for
related to
me,
the talk, I guess.
I mean, uh, if you have your basics down, I always say this, that if you're building for a platform, that was also the point of the talk, right? If you know JavaScript, then frameworks doesn't really matter, right? So yeah, I mean, go down to your basics, understand the things in detail, and then try to. So there are three things, right, according to me. One, you should know what are the common use cases that a company uses your platform for. If you are using React, you should know how to write components, how state works, how props works, how you combine them, stuff like that. So these are common things that are there in the platform, right? Then you have to also understand how, if say there are certain use cases that every single app has, you have to do authentication one day, then you have to do some data fetching, stuff like that. Understand those, and then understand a bit about the platform that you're building for. So if you're building for, say, the browser, then understand that. If you're building for a mobile using React Native or something like that, maybe understand a bit about how React Native does the whole thing. What a bridge. So we people talk a lot about the bridge, right? What's a bridge actually? What does that thing even mean? If you can understand those things, just say it doesn't really matter how experienced you are.
So we have one more important question.
Yeah, I took this poll on Twitter, all right, and people told me write subtle jokes, so I
Yeah.
tried to write subtle jokes. I'm not sure if they were subtle or not.
Great. Yeah, nice talk, Vipul. Thanks for
Thanks,
speaking
guys.
here.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great. So yeah, we'll move on to the next talk then. So our next speaker is Vikram. Hi, Vikram. Yeah,
Hey,
can
hi.
you also share your screen? Yeah.
Yep.
So Vikram will talk about accessibility.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes. Yeah, you
Okay.
can get started, Vikram.
Yeah. Thanks, Vipul, for that awesome presentation. Yeah. So the expectations are high on me now. So yeah, hi guys. So this presentation is about why, what, and how of accessibility, web accessibility. It's not completely a technical presentation. It's more of the functional point of a web application, like how important it is, and why each and every developer, UI developer, or front-end developer should take care of it. So before we start, a little about me. I'm a lead UI developer at Unboxed, and I have 10 plus experience in UI development. And yeah, my Twitter and LinkedIn handle, you can connect me anyway. Okay, so let's start. So as Simon Sinek say, we should always start with why. So why do we care about web accessibility? So this is basically my agenda. Like I'll start with why, what, and how. So let's jump in into why. So why do we care about web accessibility? And we might feel like how many people with disabilities actually use internet and web applications like shopping, and why should we actually care and build separately for them? So just to bring down the numbers, these are the numbers which we have right now. Like uh, 1 in 5 Americans have difficulty performing kind of functional or some kind of disability. Almost 15% of the global population in the world has some kind of disability, and these are the numbers which are from the developed countries, but there are numbers from a lot of countries which are not even there. That's why we should care about building web applications which is like a web for everyone. It should be usable by everyone irrespective of their disabilities and abilities. So if this is translated into numbers, then over 1 billion people worldwide has some kind of disabilities, and 253 million people have some kind of vision impairment, and 90 visually impaired actually. So yeah, so it's time that we think about these people, and we should build our web applications for them too. Yeah. So what exactly disabilities are? So these are like the broader kind of disability wherein it is vision, something related to vision, hearing, mobility, speech, cognitive, and neural, and these are the subcategories. So it varies from temporary impairment to permanent impairment. So these are the kind of disabilities which comes into picture while building any web applications. So yeah, so we might think like, okay, but is it mandatory to build web applications with accessibility? So yeah, we have seen the numbers, and many people think like it might be very expensive to separately bring someone to make it build. It's very easy. It's not even time consuming, and I'll show you how easily we can do it. And there are a bunch of compliances and standards across the world in different countries, for these web accessibility terms. So if you have any website in any of the countries like USA or Europe or many countries, you have to follow these accessibility rules, so that or there are like heavy fines and charges. Even in India, we have some kind of standards, government standards, and uh, although it's not checked on basis, but yeah, few sites which are government sites, they have all these standards. So if you go to the latest launched income tax website, it has like all kinds of accessibility, like double A WCAG 2.1 level accessibility. So I'll be telling about those, like what exactly those are, and how what are those. So yeah, from sales perspective also, there are like, I won't go much into it, but yeah, so just wanted to say like it's not only about technical. Even if even if you make your web application accessible, then there is a lot of upsell for your site also. So what exactly is web accessibility? So it's very simple. It's about is the measure of how effectively all people, including those with disabilities, are able to access and use electronic information. Like irrespective of disabilities, everyone should be able to access our web application which we are using. And how we can do it? So these are the four principles which will help us any website to completely be accessible. So perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And I'll go one by one into it, like how we can do and what we can do about it. Yeah. So what kind of assistive technologies we generally use and our website, so these are the couple of input devices which people with disabilities use. And on the right side, we see the couple of devices which is output devices. So most part, when we have any web application, we use this, the people with disabilities use screen readers. So our application should be built in such a way that any screen reader should be able to go through our website from one point to other point, and covering all the elements of our web page. So yeah, so screen readers, it's available on the browser. It's part of any OS like Mac OS or Windows. Everywhere it's available. So you can just go to the settings and enable it, and you will start hearing your navigation as soon as you navigate in browser or in on desktop anywhere. You can just see all the information. Okay, so these are the compliance levels which is defined by WCG, A, AA, and AAA. So these are like levels of things. So the standard which most of the websites follow is AA, and it if any website follows AA, then it's like very good enough to for any disabled person or a person with disabilities to access your website. AAA is a very high highest level of web accessibility, and it's little difficult to achieve. So yeah, so most of the websites follow AA rating. Okay. So before we start, like I just wanted to say like what are the testing tools we have in the market, through which we can find out whether our site is accessible or not. So most of these are free. Like in the Chrome extensions, if you install one of the extensions like Wave or Axe, it will tell complete. It will give you a list of things to be done to make your website completely accessible. Other than that, we have Lighthouse, and even our developer bar also tells you a bunch of stuff. I'll show you how it does. And you can also integrate it in your build like Axe CLI and Axe Core. If you integrate it, whenever you commit some code, and if it is not compliant, it will just throw an error, or you can break your build, or you can do anything, pre-commit hook, and it will break your build. Yeah. And there is a new company in market called AccessB. It's getting a lot of traction. They use AI to build accessibility in the runtime. So you need not write any accessible code in the design time. Like you just write normal code and just add that plugin, and they plugin basically a JS, and it will actually run it on the runtime whenever your website is live. It will take care of the accessibility things. So yeah, but it's paid and it's not free. Yeah. So now coming to the most important topic, how. So how to achieve accessibility, and what are the four main principles for achieving it. So on the left side, I have shown you what are those main principles, and how exactly those help. So basically, whenever we adhere to these principles and write code, the browser constructs an accessibility tree, like we have DOM tree, CSS tree. It also creates an accessibility tree, and that based on that tree, the information is fed to the assistive technologies like screen reader and all, and that is presented to the user. Yeah. So let's go into these points, 4 points one by one, and see how it actually works. So let's start with perceivable, like what exactly it is, and what changes code wise we have to do to make your site perceivable. So the most common thing which we hear a lot, like text alternatives for all non-text content. Like for example, we have images, then we have to add alt for images. If we have video and audio files, we have to add transcripts and captions. So let me show an example. So for example, it's a simple web page I've built on my local like file system. So if you see my cursor keyboard, when I navigate from the browser toolbar to the web page, it directly goes to this part. I don't know if you are able to see the outline or not. If I make it red, it will be able to see. So it's directly going to the second image. It's not even going to the first image. So if you go to the code, if you see, I've just added image src, that's it. I've not added tab index, and nor I have added alt text to it. So if I add tab index, then it will start going to the first image also. So that is the first principle, like add alt to all the images we have, and add tab index to all the non actionable elements in your web page. So for example, if I give something wrong, okay, and now when I load the page, so if you won't be able to see the image, but at least when the cursor or the screen reader goes to the image, will the person with disability who has a visual impairment can actually see the screen reader will read to them like daily will Caesar on poster and something like that. So at least he'll be able to get the or he or she will be able to get the context of it. Yeah. So that is about the first point. Second is like uh, captions. So for example, if I open a YouTube video, and and for example, if a person with disability, like who can't hear it properly, so for them, if I present this video, it's like just a bunch of pictures going from one frame to other. But if I switch on the uh, uh, captions, then I think even he can enjoy, or she can they can also enjoy exactly what is happening and what's going on. So that is the second point, like wherein we have to add uh, captions. Transcript, on the other hand, is a little different. Like suppose a video, we have a video with no actions, no talking, only something is happening, like birds and animals. So if you see a lot of Hollywood movies with uh, captions and transcripts, they tell you like what exactly is happening, like birds flying or aeroplane making sound and all. So that is like next level of accessibility. It's called transcript, and that falls into AAA rating. Okay, so that's like the first step. And second, so the second thing is sequence of the text elements. How important is the sequence? Okay, so let's go to sequencing here. Okay, now I'm moving my keyboard navigation through keyboard navigation. I'm on save, and suddenly I'm lost where it is. So actually, the focus has gone to cancel. Okay, but if you see uh, in the HTML page, the cancel button is on the second place, but since we have added style float right, it's going on the extreme right. So what accessibility rule says is, if this is the case, then just move this element to the end, so that at least people know that we are going to the end of the element. So something like this. So now even if I navigate through the buttons, a user can know like when exactly he's going, and since all these four buttons are done, he's going to the right side, or the navigation is going on the right side. So the thing is about the element sequencing. The third thing is display, like how important is display. So we have to use proper contrast. So for example, I'm using, so just to give you an example, so if you see this page, the background is white and the color on the font color is like light green or something, and it's not very clear. So I was just and I feel, because I'm also not able to see it, like it's not very good to our eyes when we are trying to read. So this, just imagine people with impairment, it will be very difficult for them to read it properly. So for that, we actually have standards for having the contrast, color contrast, and font, and how what exactly it is. So let me go through it. Yeah. So our color contrast should be minimum of 4.5. So this color is actually 1.7. So that's why it's very difficult to read, and it should have minimum 4.5. So how do we find it? So there's a there is a website called contrastratio.com, and your background, this is your background color, and here you can give your color in which you want to show your text. So if you give black, it has the highest contrast ratio, and if you give some color like the one which I've used here, then it will show a very less, like it will go to 1, 1.2, or 1.4 or something like that, which is not good. So your contrast ratio should be minimum 4.5. So that rule has to be taken care when you're using fonts and all. Your font family, so there are like a lot of fancy fonts in our these days. So but we should stick to one of these, and there are a few more, but I'm just giving few examples like Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, and Sans serif. These are like standards for fonts. So I can give an example. So see, this was about the font color. So see, this has a font contrast of 1.4 is to 1, and it's very difficult to do it. Whereas this has a color contrast ratio of 8.6 to 1, and it's like very good to read. Red has 4 is to 1. So it's like on the border. Okay, the next thing is the font. These are the fonts which are acceptable, widely acceptable by for the sites which has accessibility to the highest level. And text spacing should be around 1.5, so that everyone can read it very easily and properly. Okay. Yeah. So as we should always, so browser by default gives us a blue outline whenever we focus on it. So many times I've seen web applications removing it by overwriting the browser styles. But this blue outlines are very important, and it helps screen readers and people with impairment to see like where exactly the focus is. So we should always maintain this blue outline. We can change the color, and many times people don't want it to be seen when we are doing when we are using mouse. So you can actually override your style so that it doesn't show up on mouse click, but it should always show whenever there is a navigation using a keyboard. Okay, so that should be taken care. And these are like the main topics, and there are a lot more details for being AAA rated, and it's there on the W3 site. So I'll be sharing you the PPT, and you can go through it whenever. The next one is operable. So the important thing is like we should each and every content on your website should be accessible through the keyboard. We should just imagine that there is no mouse anywhere, and the user should be able to navigate from one place to another. So for that, as we know, we use tab to go forward and shift plus tab to go backward. So this should be supported. And as I told, focus elements always in view. That outline helps us to show what is where is the focus. And we should always use tab index as 0. We should not go more than 0, because it will later create a lot of problems, because the more the tab index is, the focus directly goes to that place. So once some greater tab indexes are added, later it's very difficult to keep in track. And so by default, browser doesn't show. So if you see, uh, it shows the focus is there on this element, but it's not there on any other element, on any other display element, because browser only by default shows focus on the actionable elements where there is some action. But screen reader requires to go through each and every element. So this on this we have this, because I have added tab index equal to 0 here. So similarly, we should add tab index equal to 0 on each and every element, irrespective of whether we have action or not, no action on the element. So that way, our screen readers will go through each and every element and explain it to the user. Okay, and no keyboard traps. We should not have any keyboard traps wherein uh, you go to one place and don't come back. So that is something. And when as we know, we have a lot of models in websites these days. So when you open the model, and when you close it, the tab should go exactly to the point where the model was open. So that can't happen by default, so we should write our code explicitly to do that. And we should not design content in such a way that there is a lot of seizures, like these days with ads and all. Our UI shakes a lot when ads loads and it goes up and all, so we should take care of this. And we should also have a skip to content functionality, wherein so for example, I think GitHub or a lot of websites, I think, has this, wherein we can as soon as you come inside, it tells you whether we have to skip or not. So if you say it's turned on, and I think this doesn't have that, yeah. So once you do, you get a section called skip to main content. So it will when you click on this, it will directly take you to the actual content, what this website is about, and it won't take you to the other parts of the navigation. So this really helps user to avoid, some time wastage and all. And we should use headings and labels uh, 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 properly. Like we should not use div everywhere. We should there are special meanings to h1, h2, h3, and h4. So we can adjust the font weights and sizes to them, but we should always use them, because our screen readers understands it and it navigates accordingly. Yeah, so more, if you want to know more about the operable things, we can go to this link and we'll see that. And okay, so the next thing is understandable. Like the code written should be really understandable even without doing. So as I told, the most important part of it is like semantics. So for example, what exactly is semantics? So as I told you, like we should use native elements as much as possible. Like if you take in the page, for example, we have header, aside, section, nav, and everything. So we should use these as much as possible, because the screen readers and the browser understands what's the role of those elements. So for example, I'll show you an example. Yeah, so if you see this, the code for this is like very simple. We have label and select box. Okay, I can even make it span, and it will still look the same. There is no difference in the visual changes. But why do we need to maintain label? Okay, and there is a attribute called for. So for this, I'll take you to a place called accessibility. There is a there is a tab in the right side of the developer toolbar called accessibility. And when you go to select, you can see that here uh, it tells us like what exactly this select box is about, and it's about your favorite superhero. So it basically links up the label on the top and the select box. So when the screen reader is going through it, it will understand that this select box is about your favorite superhero, and it won't treat these two elements separately. But if you use span and come here, you won't see anything, because label is meant for that, and span is not. So that's why this is the importance of semantic, and it should like we should use as much as possible these things. Table must be used for tabular content. T head, T body, everything should be written properly. And I told DOM ordering is also very important. I showed you the difference, like why it's important and all. And yeah, so we have to use all these semantics as much as possible. These have implicit semantic meaning, and browser knows how to react to them. Yeah, so make test content, and so we should always put default language on the HTML tag so that our web page understands like what language it is going through and all. And whenever, whenever, suppose we have a button, and when you click on the button, so suppose we are doing some API call and post call, and it fails, and we show a message on the top. So a screen reader will not know whether to read that message or not unless you add role equal to alert. That's why if you see in Bootstrap alerts or any framework alerts, we always have this role equal to alert. And as soon as it pops up, our screen reader goes to that and reads that, which will make the people with disabilities to understand that the action has failed. Yeah, and as I told, importance of labels and all. So yeah, so this is about the third principle, understandable. And yeah, so these are the things we have to follow, to make sure our page is accessible. And the last one is robust. Like so basically we should write our code in such a way that it should be able to work on all the user agents, like phones, tablets, and desktop browsers. And also so what exactly defines, so these are the four things which defines whether element is accessible or not. So if we have this like a combination of these four things for every element, then the browser and screen reader knows what exactly it is and how to behave it when the focus goes on those elements. Okay, so yeah, this is robust. And so for all the semantic elements, all these four attributes are there by default. But when we start writing a custom element wherein a select box is made up of divs, and where a checkbox is made up of divs for styling and all, we should take care of for these things. So to cope up with these problems, I think um, area came up. So area stands for accessible rich interface applications. This was with HTML5 spec. And this fills all the accessibility gaps, which are, so most of the semantic elements already follows these accessibility things. But whenever you are working on custom elements and a lot of styling elements, we have to take care. So we can use this area labels and area capability. So for example, how area helps us. So for example, adding semantics. So we can take an example. I don't have. So for example, we have a checkbox and all. Okay. So if we create a checkbox and add our own styles and all, on the left side, if you see, it's the browser will interpret it as only a text, even though it behaves like a checkbox. But once you add role and area checked, then the browser will understand, oh, it's a checkbox, and it will start behaving like that. So whenever the screen reader goes to that element, the user will get to know that this is a checkbox and he has to take some action on it. So here area labels are helping us to maintain the role state, what is the state, whether it is checked or unchecked, and obviously the role tells us what kind of element it is. So the next one is modifying semantics. So yeah, so for example, we have a button, okay, and it's a toggle button, just to show whether it's on and off. So on the left side, if you see, we have not added any area labels, so the browser will understand it's just a button, okay, and it will know the name. But on the right side, as soon as you add area label, whether and you give some state to it, the browser will understand what kind of element it is and what is the current state and how user can change the state and all. So this is the second use of ARIA. The third one is we can express a lot more using ARIA. So um, yeah, so for example, this is a tree. Okay, so we can add lot of more attributes to it for a better understanding, like on each and every level. So if you have subtree and tree, so we can add role equal to tree and li role equal to tree atom, and whether it's expanded or collapsed and all that stuff. So this way the user will easily understand like what's going on, and he can like he or she can work on it, opening and closing it accordingly. And yeah, so you can also give some extra labels and add a lot of relationships to it. So if you see here, basically this button and this div has some relationship, and once you add area controls to it, and so if you see this button and this div, so when you click on this button, this div is going to open. So area controls equal to advanced settings is the idea of the below div. So it also helps us maintain the relationship between different elements and understand the relationship. So this is also helpful. And I can directly open this and show you. Yeah, so it's also about the label and select box and option, and also this is also one of the things. So yeah, so we can also see area labeled by and all. And as I told, the states for each element we can give the states, and also all these things are very well documented on these sites. Where if you want to build a custom radio group or radio element or custom checkbox, you can open these links and see what are the minimum standard steps which we have to add it to our control so that it is accessible and it's widely accepted by everyone. Yeah. So accessibility in conclusion, like if you want to make your website accessible, uh, so use so right from the beginning, use semantic HTML as much as possible. Use built-in elements as like select boxes and checkbox as much as possible, rather than building our own checkbox and select box. But if we are trying to build, we have to reduce the gap by using area labels. Avoid positive tab index and give tab index to each and every element, readable and non-readable. And yeah, full keyboard access to each and every element. And make focus and hover equal, like keyboard focus and mouse enter and out, everything should be equal. So yeah, so you're suppose you click on using mouse and hit an enter button on or control enter on the button, it should equally behave. If you use div as button, it won't behave. So yeah, so that's why we have to make sure that it's always behaving equally. Yeah, focus style, like we should always show outline when you're navigating using keyboard. um, your web pages should be functional. It should not completely depend on CSS. It should, the structure should, the skeleton should always be workable. And if we have a lot of custom elements, we should fill the accessibility gap with area. Yeah, text alternatives for the media content, and yeah, text size and color distinguishable. So these are just a checklist of whatever I have told you. And if we keep this in mind, I think we'll achieve at least 95 to 98% of accessibility. The other 2%, if we are not able to do using this, we can use the tools and testing tools which we have provided, and that will help you achieve as much as possible. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, nice talk, Vikram. Uh,
Yeah, I'll stop sharing, and yeah, I'm open for questions.
yes, yeah.
If you-
Hi everyone. If you have any questions on accessibility, you can ask right now.
yeah. Or if you don't have enough time, you can ping me or tweet me, or you can add it to the YouTube stream also. I can reply there.
Yes, yes. Yeah. We'll just wait for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
If
sure.
not, we can ask. People. Yeah, Sanket made a comment about React area. Have you
Oh
tried
yeah,
React
yeah,
area?
yeah. Yep. Yeah, we should. I should have mentioned about that also. Yep. So I haven't tried exactly React Area by Adobe, yeah, but I've read about it. Like it's easier, like whatever. For example, in a basic HTML, we have label and font tag, but in React Area, it's HTML4. So there are a couple of changes for making those accessible on React. Like the attributes change, the convention of adding those attributes change. Yeah. So yeah, it's little different in React. Maybe I'll cover it sometime again. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So if you have more questions, you can continue chatting with Vikram in the YouTube chat. Otherwise, you can also connect with him on the Twitter and reach out to him over there. Yeah. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks for the
Thanks.
nice talk.
Thanks,
It's
guys.
very informative. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
we'll move on to our next talk. So our next speaker is Sanket. I think Sanket doesn't need any introduction. Everyone is
Hey,
already
Kiran.
familiar with him. Yeah,
Uh,
hi.
Good to be
Uh,
back. Just a
yeah,
second. Let me just check
yeah,
my audio. Yeah, I think the right mic is connected. Okay, good.
great,
Good to see
great.
you and
Yeah,
be doing
nice
this.
man.
Yeah,
Can you also share your screen?
yeah, sure. Yeah. So this is the last talk, right? And probably we'll be
Y-
doing a little bit of panel or chit chat after this.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Hmm. I have shared my screen.
Great. So we'll get started then. I
Yes.
will add your screen share. Okay, then I'll remove myself and you can get started with it.
Great. Uh, Good to be back here at React Bangalore, that is React Online now. And yeah, so the topic actually, we came up with this topic in a Twitter reply. Actually, it was I saw Reactify tweet that they were looking for speakers and then they were looking for topics. And then I came up with a few of them and this was selected. I totally forgot about a lot of things, but yeah, here we are. And I think from a series of things that we have been doing, the streams and the talks or Twitter spaces, this is going to be a sort of like gist or a summary of all those things. Great. So, does your app need a global state? That's the question. A little bit about me. I'm Sanket, and I'm a co-founder at Geekians and also software engineer at Geekians. Geekians is a community-driven company, and we are very active in React, React Native, and the entire OSS scene here in Bangalore and in India, or maybe around that. Great, and we are building native base right now. I'm personally building. Geekians is doing a lot more things, but me and my team that I work with on a daily basis, we are working on building native base version 3. And I could relate to all the talks before this. The first one, I think, uh, the last talk by Vikram on accessibility, that is being taken care here in native base version 3. Then also by Apurv. Apurv talked about how to build a code editor in the browser. And we are building a builder sort of thing around native base that will announce maybe in a couple of months. That uses a lot of practices, but I have to look at esbuild and also Skypack that Apurv mentioned. We are using something like Rollup and a like custom configuration of Rollup with the builder that we are building. And also use SWR is that Megha talked about. I'm going to like elaborate a little bit there as well. And yeah, Vipul talked about bridging the gap between design and code. That's my favorite part. So I'm happy that I'm on the last. But yeah, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I go by the handle Sanket Sahu. And yeah, so does your app need a global state? That's a question. So app can be a really large thing to talk about. So I've rephrased it. Does your component need the global state? If you're building components, do you want that component to speak to the global state, or can it directly say make API calls and fetch it and show it on the screen? So let's see. The answer to this is it depends, and that's the end of my talk. Not really. Let's elaborate on what that it depends mean. So let me go back. I have some drawings on Excalidraw, so I think that would be sufficient. Yeah, great. So does your component need the access to the global state? What is state management? Pretty straightforward. I think everybody who works with all these front-end libraries and frameworks, they have a fair bit of idea of what a state is. So whenever you create a variable and drive your user interface with that variable or data, that is the state part of your application. In context of React, it would be use state. Context, yeah, metaphor. So in context of React, it can also be context. So your state can be driven, the local state of the component is driven by use state. And if you want something like a global thing, you would probably use something like the context, the React's context. So going to the gist of this talk, or the question, or the things I'm going to talk about. So this is my research, and everything boils down to the what your requirement is and what you want to build. So I highly recommend not to draw straight away conclusions that this library is good or this library is bad, or this is performant and this is not. The ultimate answer is totally it depends. It's funny, but it's true. Let's explore what exactly do we have here. So first of all, why is it important to manage state in your app? The front end has got more powerful, but back in the days when we had like backend driven apps or backend driven pages, the front end didn't have to do the heavy lifting. But with the evolution, the front end is now more powerful. If you see something like Next.js Live, they run the entire npm and like the entire bundler and the entire environment using all those web workers and wasm and whatnot. So the front end is really powerful. And now the front end is doing most of the things. Backend is mere takes in a request and then saves the data and then gives it back. So anything that is shared across devices and across the internet, that is handled by the backend. But anything beyond that, most of the things are handled in the front end itself. So it's important that we handle the data part of your application and manage it well so that it's performant and it's structured. So the first one is definitely about the front end being more powerful and the front end driving the entire user interface based on the data that it receives or it computes based on say API calls or the user interaction or anything like that. And then when we have like shared data between components, then we need to have like a central state or something like that. So let's talk about local versus global state management. So local, when we use state, that is localized to a component. Global, when there are 2 or 3 components and they want to like get an access to the same source of data. So there are multiple ways how we can do the global state management. Probably we can drill it down from the top level to all the components down there. But in that case, we'll end up in a lot of like props passing and then calling callbacks up the tree. So it becomes really tedious. So we might need something like a global state management, and most of the apps use it with React. So use state works for most of the cases. We lift up the state to the parent when needed, and we move to a global state, something like Redux or Mobex or say context. We move to that in particular cases when we need the access throughout the application. And so let's talk about different scenarios. Like we have forms, toggle button, animations, odd data, shopping cart, and table. So where do we store the data of a form? So we can store the data of a form localized to a component. Say if you have something like a username and password login form, then the validation logic that needs to drive the entire form, so that can be local to that component itself. But if we need the form data that to if that form affects the other parts of your app, then probably we need to pull it up in a global state. So in most of the cases with forms, it's local state, and then it is synced back to the global state once the form is validated or submitted. That's the strategy that we use with forms. Toggle button, again, it can, if the toggle button is changing everything, say for example dark mode or light mode if you have a toggle. So in that case, it's better to keep the dark mode and the Boolean variable that drives the color mode into a global namespace. But something like the checkbox that you get under a form, that I accept terms and conditions, in that case, it's local to the form. Uh, Animation. So animation is mostly local, and we don't usually do like interruptible animations in most of the cases. But if we are doing interruptible animation, that means uh, if you want to intercept the behavior of animation based on some other factor, in that case you might need that animation to be controlled from a global level. But most of the animations, like say accordion or some animation on the form, say on the button, it can be local. Most of the animations are local. In case of auth data, I think this is most of the time global, that you save the logged in user details in a global state and make all the components accessible to that global state. Shopping cart is again something similar that needs to go global, because you might have a dedicated page for shopping cart, and then you have like different pages wherein you add to cart and then get read from the shopping cart if that item is added in the shopping cart or not. Then at the top you might need to show the total number of items in your cart or something like that. So shopping cart is mostly global. And then we have data tables. Data tables can be local, but if there are cases that a data row needs to be in sync with everything in the entire app, which usually happens so that you don't have like stale data. In that case, you might need a global layer wherein you store and normalize everything and store at a global level and take a reference of that in your data table. But in most of the cases, data table are built such that the data that is being fetched in the data table is usually local. So yeah, so that's about these cases. Then there are specific cases, say multi-step forms. So that may need global state, because you might want user to go through different routes and then sync that back to the global state. Yeah, I think editing forms, that needs to keep a copy, and whenever we are done with the forms, we should sync it back to the global if that affects any part of the global state. And yeah, when using form, avoid messing the global state. Yeah, that's how most of the form libraries are doing it, except the ones that is driven by Redux, because it has to link to the global store of Redux. But libraries like, I think, React Hook Forms and Formic, they use the local state itself. All right, moving on. So how state management changes with different use cases. So the front end is evolving, even like with if we use create React app, in that case it's more like uh, everything is on the front end and it just fetches the entire app in the first go, and then nothing is sent or read from the backend. So in case of create React app, it might be a little different, but in case of server side rendered apps, something like Next.js, that the default config of Next.js, like every page gets to hit the server, and you can do something on the server right there and prepare the entire page and send it back. So there is a bit of difference when you are doing like API calls or anything like that between create React app and Next.js, or say single page application versus server side rendered apps, because uh, server-side rendered apps are dynamic. It can have a backend piece. It can have a dynamic data fetching as well. So something like get server-side props. If you are confident on using that, you can use that function to fetch most of the, say, API call or the data that that particular route needs. But that's not the case with create React app or something when we have the routing in the front end, wherein we will need to fetch things when the component is, or when the screen is mounted, or when the route is changed on the front end. So that's a bit different. So So the question is, should we store the response from the server in the global state when we are using create React app? And how is hooks making us worry less about it? I want to touch upon a little bit on use SWR that Megha talked about. So use SWR is really nice. It's nice on the philosophy more than the library itself. That it feels like you are fetching something on the component itself, but it goes through its own layer that is global on your app level. So use SWR is a library that is used to fetch data in your components, and you can drop in a link and then you get the JSON data, and then you can wire up the data that is fetched from use SWR in your component. It supports caching. It supports uh, like you can have something like set interval and refetch and things like that, which is really nice, which feels like you're doing everything in the local component itself. But the if you look at the architecture, use SWR has its own layer, and it handles all the responses from the server at its own layer, where it can cache things. So if you are using use SWR at in two different components, they are trying to fetch the same URL. It would pick it up from the cache and show it right away on the screen. So use SWR or hooks in general, any state management around hooks, it feels that it's local, but it is really easy to pull it up at the global level without changing the APIs at the local component level, which is really nice. I love this about hooks. Like if you go back to the days when people just use Redux, we used to like send everything to Redux, to the global state, and we had to think a little bit about like where the data is being stored and where data is being fetched from, and how it is wired up in the component. With something like use SWR, you don't have to think about all those things, but in a way it is doing all those things. So that is really magical about hooks, that feels local but it is global. It is very similar to use mutation and use query of Apollo client as well. So you can say use mutation and use query. These are the counterparts to use SWR. So this is REST versus GraphQL sort of thing. Yeah. So a lot of things to think about around like how you're fetching your data and where you're storing it, and do you have a caching layer. So all these things matter a lot when you're deciding if you want to go global or you want to stay local to your component. Then comes Jamstack. So I think this is very much related to the previous point itself. So when you don't have a server-side rendered app, you have to make all the API calls in the front end. And Jamstack stands for JavaScript API and markup. This is a stack that can be hosted on a static storage, which does not have a dynamic backend piece. So this is much like create React app. So the question is, like, how does it change if we are using Jamstack versus something like a server-side rendered app? So in Jamstack, we have to manually handle all the data, and it's handled in the front end. Whereas in case of server-side rendered apps like Next.js, we can do a part of it. The data that the entire route or the page needs, it can be sent back to the backend, and the query can be in the backend using some function like say get server-side props. So yeah, a lot of things to wrap your head around it, but yeah, that's the like high level idea. Okay. So what are the options that we have when it comes to state management? Uh, Obviously Redux, and then we have a bunch of other things. So let's see. So Redux, and then we have Redux Toolkit, which is a wrapper around Redux that simplifies the entire workflow of Redux. So I really like it that you can write your reducers and the default state and the actions around it in one single place using Redux Toolkit. And then we have Zustand and Jotai and Recoil and React's context, and something that we built as well, Sync State. This is a shameless plug. And yeah, I've kept Mobux as a separate thing here because Mobux is a bit different when we compare all these. I can talk about each one of them and give a high level idea about the differences. So all these are based on functional programming paradigm, whereas MOBUX is something you can say that it's more like object oriented paradigm. But we have something like MOBUX state tree that is the perfect marriage between object oriented paradigm and functional. So you can use all the like great advantages of object oriented programming, like you can mutate things and you can create relationships between your objects using MOBUX state tree. But under the hood, MOBUX state tree handles everything at a functional level. So I'm a big fan of MOBUX state tree personally. But the industry, people are using Redux toolkit a lot. I see for most of the use cases context as well being used. And recoil was announced at React Europe, but I have not seen a lot of people using recoil. And I see Zustand being used a lot. I saw it in a couple of projects that I was working on, and it's pretty neat. Zustand is like feels like local state management, and the magic of hooks make it like a global state management. So yeah, go ahead and try it out. I think we missed X state, which should be here, but yeah. So these are the options. Don't get too confused what to use and what not to use. You can get a high level understanding of each one of them and see which one works for your use case. For most of the use case, I think Redux toolkit works very well. MOBUX state tree as well works really well if you have a bit idea about like object oriented paradigm. And yeah, Zustand is also being getting some traction these days. So Zustand, Redux toolkit, MOBUX state tree, these are my picks. And yeah, so that's a very high level idea about like the options that we have right now with the state management solutions in 2021. So the next thing I want to touch upon is, can we mix and match various implementation techniques? Like, can we mix, say, context with, say, Zustand or Redux, or maybe Redux and MOBUX? So the answer to this is is that X plus Y is not good, but that may be your use case. Like you can use Redux and MOBUX in your same project. So the question that you need to ask is, how does the bundle size get inflated when you have like multiple state management libraries? Is your team comfortable with the philosophies of different state management solutions? The problem that you're trying to solve, which particular state management solution or philosophy makes more sense? For example, if you are building a design tool, then I think object-oriented paradigm makes more sense, uh, because it's more performant in terms of you are using more of imperative API than declarative API, and you are re-rendering things when you need. But in case of most of the CRUD apps or dashboard apps that we build, functional programming paradigm works really well. Something like Redux would be just fine, or Zustand just would be just fine. Mixing things, if you have like two different parts of the app that is like totally different than each other, but they are like co-located, or maybe in different routes, in that case you can have like different teams working on each one of the module, and it makes sense to have like different state management for like different modules of your app. And context, using React's context is totally fine with anything else, because this comes built in with React. So go ahead and use it, maybe for color mode, dark mode, and all those things can be stored directly straight away in context without any other state management library. Yeah. So the answer to all these questions would always be, it depends on what you're trying to build and like which library you want to use. So I have tried to summarize it, that what considerations do we make before selecting a library. So these are the considerations that I could come through. The first one is use case, what your project needs, what's your requirement like. Is it, say, something that is, say, distributed? Is it real-time use case? Are you building a chat app? Are you building a design tool? Are you using a dashboard or a plain static, say, landing page? So use case is the first thing. Documentation. can you find the things that you're looking for? Do you understand the philosophies? So documentation is the second part. Then the third is examples, so that you can go through the recipes, copy and paste, and quickly learn through things. That's what we do: copy paste and then try to like tweak things around and see if you can build things. Then fourth one would be learning curve, and understanding the basics and getting off the ground. And then we have the lines of code, like say to do something really trivial, are you writing a lot of code? Is there a lot of boilerplate code? Is there a lot many files that you need to touch upon? So that could also be one consideration. And no, I'm not trying to paint redux black in this point. Then we have philosophy and design principles, the community. And yeah, community does not mean number of stars on GitHub. It's definitely a bit of factor there, but it can also be because of the age of that library. Something that is new but it's rising might not have a lot of GitHub stars. So try to find the community of the library around the library that you're going to use. Then flexibility of modification. Is it like too tightly coupled with a lot of things, or can you jump in and like make changes to it or modify it? That's very important. And last, I think this should be the last point, that knowledge and experience of the team. Usually this is like the number one thing that people just directly straight away jump on and then say we don't have any knowledge or expertise or experience on that particular library that you're suggesting. But these libraries, they take like a day or two to learn, or max a week, right? So always keep this at the lower bottom, I would say. People usually develop a bias with the library towards and against that they are using or they're not using. So I think this is very important, that be very open about the libraries that's available out there. Try to understand the architecture and the high level, like the surface API of those libraries, and not like go like too strong about I want to use this and this is the best thing, right? So always keep this as the last point, knowledge and experience of the team. Okay, so what's next? So how does the state management implementation change with the introduction of serverless application? I think, yeah. So serverless applications, I think it does not matter a lot, because anyway, we are doing APIs and talking to that. So yeah, it doesn't matter too much. Then when do we introduce state management libraries in our project? Do we do it at the bootstrapping? Do we do it when we need it? Or when exactly do we do it? So I think it should be when we are architecting the app. I think we usually start a new project with something in our mind, and I think the theme can be set really early on. It's good if you can install the libraries and set the best practices and the ESLint rules or TSLint rules in the project right when you start, rather than evolving it with the project, because that sets the ground right for the project. There can be cases when you may need new libraries to be introduced with new features coming in, but it's always good to do it at the project bootstrapping time. So what's the conclusion? Which state management library should you use? Should you use local state or the global state? So the answer is it depends. All right, I think that's all from my side. And yeah, get in touch with me if you need anything. You want to chat about any particular topic around state management, accessibility, UI, React. I'm available. My DMs are open. I go by the Twitter handle Sanket Sahu. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you so much. Okay, and I'm going to wait for Kiran.
Yeah.
Here we have.
Yeah, thanks, Sanket. Nice summary. If you have any questions, you can ask now. I'm also sending out a tweet related to that panel discussion after this.
All right. Kiran, meanwhile, when are we starting with the physical meetups?
I'm not sure, man.
I see people doing it in Australia and other places. I think they are pretty much
Yeah,
vaccinated, so it makes sense.
yeah. But I think I don't think we will be able to do this year in India because the number of vaccinations
Mhm.
and also vaccinations are not 100%, right? In the sense, I'm not sure. Like people say that we should still be careful even after vaccination. Like at least more like significant portion of the population gets vaccinated. We should still be careful because that's when the virus dies out, right? When enough people are vaccinated, the possibility of
Right,
spread reduces. That's when the virus dies out.
right.
Anyway, I don't think I'm not hopeful that we'll be able to do this year, at least in India. But I
Mhm.
see in US and all, they were able to get back. But that's also a little bit of trouble because recently there was one conference in US, but in a physical conference, and the attendees of that conference got affected. So, which is not a good sign.
Right.
Anyway, let's see. Maybe
Mhm.
hopefully next year.
Yeah, I'll follow whatever you do. So we have reacted to Bangalore as well, waiting for it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, so, excluding that quick diver, do you have any questions on state management for Sangeet? Yeah, I think you could also mention something like Apollo. I'm not sure that comes into picture. If you take GraphQL and also into picture, right? Then a few more options will emerge like Apollo
Yeah.
or Relay, those
Mhm.
things. Yeah,
I tried using local state management with Apollo. It was long back, so I'm not sure
yeah,
what's the current state, but I couldn't. It was very hard. I could just go back to
yeah, yeah.
context or something for local state management.
It
Mm.
looks complicated. Like if you use something like Redux or
Mhm.
just I need to take this, man.
Yeah, sure. I'll carry on. No problem. Great. So I think we have a question by Adarsh. Thunk or Saga, which one do you recommend for middleware library? I found Redux Saga code more organized, but React Toolkit recommends to use only for complex logic. So I have used Saga a little bit, mostly Thunks, but in the past couple of years, I don't think I've used Redux too much. Things might have changed. So I think Thunk is used for like low level thing, and Saga is for like more organized code. But mostly, you might not end up in a scenario where like you would have to decide between Saga and Thunk. So Thunk works for like most of the cases. Just keep your code simpler and use Thunk. Use Saga for like race conditions and things like that only. Okay, so we have another question. Someone is asking like he has his interview day after tomorrow, so what to study? I think yeah, just get your basics right. You'll crack it. Okay, Kiran is back. Kiran, you are on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
what's happening is, we are shipping the React Day goodies.
Okay.
We
Okay.
got the t-shirts. So the courier people are calling and they are coming for pickup. And
Okay.
okay. Do you have any questions on the
I think
state
we
management?
attended all the questions.
Okay, sure then. We'll start with the panel then. I'll bring in all the speakers. Okay. Uh,
Sure.
Hi Vikram. Uh,
Hey,
Hi Apur. Uh, Vipul. Apur, are you there? Yeah. Mega, I think you are disconnected. You can join back, I guess. Yeah. Uh, Hi, Apur. Yeah. So, yeah, if you have any generic questions, you can ask now. It need not be related to the top topics. Maybe if you have any generic questions related to React front end or even careers, maybe jobs or careers, you can ask now.
I have
I will
few
look out
questions
for.
for Apurv. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Apurv, yeah, I really like the talk esbuild. So I just wanted to understand the webpack loaders that we have, something like SAS, and we have a bunch of them, right? So how do we use those in esbuild environment?
To be very honest, I haven't explored much of those. I'm
Mhm,
just basically focusing. I've started focusing on performance first,
mhm,
so I haven't tried that. But
mhm.
if I try, I'll definitely let you know.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
I haven't worked on that
No,
before.
no problem. And any idea about the TypeScript support there with esbuild?
No idea about that as well
Okay.
because I
I think you
usually
have
work
given
with
me a
that.
lot of good pointers, Apurv. Anyway, I have already shared your name in my Kikian's channel. That go ahead and watch Apurv's talk. So I think we'll
Thank
explore
you.
from there. Yeah.
Yeah, but surely, like, I'll figure out the answers for all these questions you've asked because I've not worked with TypeScript yet,
Mhm.
and I don't know about the SAS modules as well.
Yeah, because we are building a tool,
Hello?
the live coding tool in the
Yeah.
browser itself.
Yeah.
It's not as extensive as. Can somebody mute Kiran?
Delivery, na?
Whoops, we can't.
We can.
Yeah,
He is
But
the
delivery.
host.
yeah, we'll talk loudly now. Yeah, so Apurva, I was saying that we are building something like an in-browser editor, code editor, and it has to have all those things like bundling and all those things. So probably I'll try to use esbuild. We have configured rollup in the browser, so let's see.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And why is ES build so fast? Did you mention it? Like I don't remember. So why is ES build very fast? What different does it does than other bundlers like Webpack or Rollbar
Yeah,
or
so
Parcel?
basically the logic there is they say that so any bundler, right? They try to do all the dependency graph and stuff like that. They skip that entirely and let your browser handle it. So if you are writing like CJS or something like that, require statements and all, those won't be resolved. But if you're writing like ES6 imports and exports, then the browser can already do it with import maps, right? So that's the logic. They skip the whole dependency graph creation stuff.
Mega, you want to clarify
Uh,
something? You had a comment in the private chat.
Yeah, so I misanswered one thing while I was giving my talk. So somebody asked in the comments, I don't remember the name, if we can use as SWR on scale, and I said I don't know, but we are using it at Hashnode itself. So yeah, you can use it at scale, and yeah, it gives a very good performance. So we have been optimizing for lighthouse scores, and like we didn't use SWR that extensively, but yeah, we were able to use it at places to improve the performance as needed. Yeah, that was the whole the whole point.
Mega, you at one point you were working with Tanay, right? Or you were in the boot camp. Was it you?
No, I wasn't in the boot camp. I was in Tanish's community when it was in its initial phase with
Oh, okay.
500 some people.
Okay. Mhm. Because I saw you and I think Shad being tagged in one of the tweets by
Yeah, the
Tanay.
Shad was also in that phase when that
Ah,
community actually started with one person only, and it
okay.
was in its 50 people phase too. Now it's big. Like now, I think like there are 13,000 something people, but they are doing good work.
Yeah, yeah, they are doing good work for sure.
so we have some questions coming up if anyone wants to pick up.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, so you can, I mean, there are a variety of tools like other panel members can also add. Like we have Lighthouse, one of the most used tools for measuring apps front end performance, and you can basically break it into multiple levels, like the app performance, right from the deployment kind of steps, then the actual code steps, and uh, like for example, where you are deploying, how you are distributing it to people, which kind of caching mechanisms you are taking care of. Like many times we forget using the caching mechanisms, which are very helpful, for measuring the app performance. So yeah, so those are few, and you guys can add a little more.
Yeah, we use Lighthouse extensively. I personally also use them for my app. The good thing about Lighthouse is Chrome DevTool teams keeps adding more and more hints as the day passes. So now Lighthouse can also tell you about the libraries, if there are alternates, stuff like that. So Lighthouse is one. If you can optimize for Lighthouse, I mean, all the others should also be fine.
I think
Lighthouse
React,
yeah. Go ahead, Kiran. Sorry.
yeah, React DevTools also does really good job of giving the
In
profiles of each
profiling.
component. Yeah, if some component is having so many re-renders, or if something is taking so much time, it will give good, very good graphs, and we can attack the top consuming, the least performant components.
If
I
like
think,
React
yeah.
Dev, yeah.
Sorry, Megha. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was simply saying, if you tackle all the Lighthouse suggestions as well as the React DevTools first, like most of the parts are done. Yeah, now
So
you can say
yeah,
your
yeah,
points,
yeah.
Sanket.
So yeah, I think when we talk about performance, we there are two parts. One is when you're using the app and the load time. So Lighthouse solves most of the load time issues and not during the runtime when you're using the app. And that's when the Chrome's profiler works really well. And React DevTools work really well with the Chrome's profiler. So you can see which component is taking a lot of time to render, or if there is any computation happening in the component lifecycle itself. So that helps.
So we
Yeah.
have few more questions. Uh,
Okay.
Anyone want to pick up?
I would love to answer that.
Yeah, you
Go
can.
ahead.
Yeah, I think don't depend on your company, don't depend on your day job. If you are just assigned, say, just writing CSS, nobody is asking you not to do anything else in your free time. And it's your curiosity and passion that leads to anywhere. Like, I think everyone here on the panel, they must have a day job plus they are doing something on the side, and that's not to spoil your work life balance. That's totally because of like you want to do it. For example, Vipul gave the talk, and Vipul is on my team, by the way. Vipul works with me, so he does everything, great work he does, and I didn't know that he had prepared such a great talk. He did that in his free time, and he researched and spoke to Sid, right? So use the community and go ahead and learn things in and around. And as Vipul mentioned, again, like know the basics, right? So, and that leads to everything.
Yeah. To add to
So if
that, like,
anyone, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Kiran, you can go ahead.
no, no, no. I'm just saying you can add to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So to add to that, like a lot of features are there in the various libraries or frameworks we use, or in general also. So try to create clones of already good apps. So that way, I mean, the amount of learning that goes into it, and into the development of clone of some good apps is really. So you will learn a lot of stuff from that also.
Great. So we have one more question. So this seems to be out of.
Very much related, I think. Everything is related.
Yeah, yeah,
I go and read the article that Figma CTO wrote about using WASM. They have built the entire browser inside the browser using OpenGL, not OpenGL but WebGL, and it's very nice. So we have good resources around it. How to use WASM, and it's the future. It's not like everywhere. Don't make it the AI and ML of like college engineering student, right? That, okay, this is the thing I want to learn. This is something when
yeah,
you learn when you need it. When you want to do the heavy lifting in the browser, then you might need WASM. Not with the every day-to-day job. 1 out of 100 job might need WASM.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So how to start as a front-end architect?
This is like asking how to start building buildings.
Yeah. Also, these roles are, quite different, right? Each company has their own levels, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure what, like some companies call architects, some people call principal engineers. The terminology
So
differs.
yeah. So on a common front, I've seen these days like a lot of companies, product-based companies, they have an array of applications. So they are expecting architects, to align those projects, build some common steps so that all the projects look unified, not like different. Since we have different team members working on different projects, and there are like not much of communication between them. So I've learned, it's just my input. Like I've seen companies expecting architects to unify it, bring in steps, standard steps, so that development is and the app looks equally good, same in all the products. So something like that on that front.
Yeah, I think we might have some questions for Apur. Apur, you are going to join Razorpay, right?
Yeah.
Like someone was asking, maybe you can also look at the chat. Like he was working in some company with, they are doing some React work and everything. But if you want to go join a company like Razorpay, what he has to do?
Be friends with Kamlesh. Sorry.
Yeah,
So, so basically, I can tell about myself. I've never done DSA, and I was never into that stuff. Like I'm still in final year, and all people around me were used to do DSA, and they were involved with that completely. But I never used to like it, so I thought of doing something which I really like. So all the internship experiences I have, everything throughout the college is in front end domain. Like I've explored other domains, but I always liked front end. So I think I like tried to stick with front end, and the experiences all I have is in front end. So maybe that's why you should like really do whatever you like. And I think you should never focus on a particular company. I think it's all about the work. So like they shouldn't have a particular dream company. That's my concept. So I would say don't have a particular dream company in your mind. Either work or like focus on your work and learn more.
great.
Yeah.
So we have one question on React. What is the best way to separate business logic from UI?
Kiran, you should start picking names.
Sorry?
You should start calling
I
out
can answer
names.
that.
Actually. Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
basically, it really depends actually. So uh, first of all, depends on what is your application, right? If your application is UI extensive and most of just like a small amount of data, it's just your users' preferences are there. Maybe you're storing light mode, dark mode preferences, stuff like that, right? Then it doesn't really matter, right? You can keep it anywhere. But if your application is data intensive, if your UI layers are totally related to your data, then your application is just data, UI is secondary. So think about data and then think about UI later. And then all the learnings from days where we didn't have a dedicated front end, the MVC architecture and stuff like that, they still apply. I mean, abstraction is great, encapsulation is great. Think about who should have access to the data, who shouldn't. Design your data first, and then your application will come live automatically.
There is a very nice talk by Michelle, the creator of Mobux, how UI is an afterthought. So that article is really nice.
Yes. So we have one question on Nest.js, and does it work well with Nest.js? Redux work well with Nest.js?
I think the question is, do you need that first?
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends if you need that or not. If you have like different routes and your page changes, then you might need something else, not Redux. If it is just like user auth, something like that, then you might need you can just use auth by next, right? Or the same philosophy that use auth uses to share things across your application. You can use Redux for sure.
Yeah, we can use, but in general, it's not an SPA, right? It's split into multiple pages, so we can get the Redux working, but might not be the best solution all the time. That's where I think Nest.js also suggests use SWR, I guess, in their documentation itself. If you want to fetch data, on the client side, they suggest use SWR.
Like the whole hash node is built with Next.js. So we use MobiX, which is like I don't find it like too different from Redux, but yeah, it works really well with it. So it could be a choice.
Yeah. So you use Mobets or Mobets straight tree?
We use MobiX.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the main difference between the Mobets and Redux is like Redux generally suggests a single store, right? With Mobets, we don't have such restriction. We can have multiple stores.
Yeah,
So in that case, for each page we can have a store with
yeah,
Mobets. But if you are using Redux, the, we can still get it working, but that might slightly deviate from the philosophy of Redux.
yeah. The whole thing, divides with pages that goes
Yeah,
more naturally
yeah,
with Next.js.
yes. So do you have any other questions?
Sanket, I just looked for the SaaS plugin which you asked. So there are a few community-based plugin, but they are not officially supported by esbuild. So the people who have contributed to that, they have built their own plugins. Like there are plugins for Markdown and for SVGs and different things. So they're not officially supported, but but they are available.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
think Wheat by Vue.js team, they also use esbuild in that.
Yeah, they use esbuild. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Wheat has a React target as well. So got to try
Yeah.
that. I think it might be supported in that particular thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Ankit, I think you have a couple of chat messages, but I couldn't understand your question. Can you explain what you are actually looking for?
So he was asking for the talk that Sanket mentioned. So if somebody could paste that in the chat.
Okay, okay,
The link to that article.
Michelle's talk actually.
Yeah,
okay,
Uh,
yeah. I'll share that.
sure. So, yeah, maybe Ankit, maybe share both the article and the talk. Uh, so, any other questions?
I think I've shared it. Maybe you can. Yeah. I don't see it in the
Okay,
stream, but yeah, I've shared it.
okay. I think I will give a Sankit a chance to plug in.
Sorry.
Sankit, it's you.
Any recommendations for design systems for React Native and web? Okay, I had the T-shirt somewhere lying down. Use native base.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had okay. I shouldn't be saying this, but yeah, V3 is sort of stable right now, but we didn't have a full blown launch. It's so try it out, and it's working everywhere. Next.js, React, React Native. So one design system, one single API that works on all the platforms flawlessly. We are working on the performance part, but we'll crack it soon.
Great.
All right. Is that all?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is
Mega,
a
you have a question?
yeah, there is an entire blog post about it. So yeah, you can read it. Rest, like I didn't act like it was implemented before I joined, and like it's like a little advanced for me. So yeah, I can link that blog post here. It was like yeah, implemented by different people in my team.
Too many side projects.
How many people?
I think Sid
I'm
Sid should answer
managing.
that.
I think Apurva and I are managing college as well. Apart from
So
Yeah,
three things for you guys.
yeah, side projects. College is a side project these days for us.
yeah. But luckily, the final year, final semester is only for project, right? You don't have any courses, right?
No, it's not like that.
Some
Okay,
of the
you do
colleges
have
have
course.
that thing. Like
Yeah.
last semester
Uh-huh.
completely goes to the BTech project, but some
Yeah.
have their classes as well.
Does he also have that?
No, it's just
No,
the
mine did.
BTech product.
Mine. One of the thing is project, and there are
Yeah,
like other things too.
yeah.
Yeah, but how do you manage three different things?
By relying on the private sector's ability to not recognize what they're writing.
We manage by like I manage by not doing assignments for the starters and like only giving
She goes to
exams.
SIT. She has a lot of
Yeah.
seniors who already know a lot of faculty. So she just tells them
No, no,
to do
no,
the task and they give them money.
no, no. Don't give misinformation here.
Yeah, it's mostly prioritization, right?
Yeah. To answer that, it's mostly prioritization.
Who's taking this one?
Whoever who takes interviews and stuff.
Interview, yeah.
Yeah, interviews. I think Sanchit must take because he is hiring a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we usually check on the basic knowledge, the fundamentals first, IQ, and more of real life, maybe projects or side projects. These things matter a lot. I think these days there are a lot of people, and even colleges are pushing people, students, on like building projects. And if you build something simple but end to end, that you understand every bit of it, that would be better than doing something like machine learning or WASM and whatnot. So do a full stack project, just build a CRUD project and touch all the basic parts, and it'll be very easy for you to crack an interview. I think
Great.
Sid mentioned 4 points in the last Twitter Spaces that we went live on. What makes a well-rounded front-end dev or a dev? He mentioned about the deep knowledge and then surface knowledge. Deep knowledge, I think, knows just something in depth. Then surface knowledge about the things that's in the community. And then third one was the non-technical skills, that is communication and interpersonal skills. And the fourth one was community. So if you do four things, you can crack most of the interviews, especially
Yeah, I
Razorpay.
very much, yeah. I very much agree with it. Like, these are the four things I got my job because of.
Awesome. A lot of couriers for Kiran.
Yeah. So right now I'm trying to ship t-shirts to 300 people. Yeah. So
Am
that's
I
the work
am I
going on.
going to get one, Kiran?
Yeah, yeah. You are
Am I?
you are
Am
going to
I?
get. Yeah, you are going to get it.
Great.
Yeah.
And
Good stuff.
anything along with it?
Sorry.
Anything along with the t-shirt?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll know that when you get it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, great, man. Like, thanks everyone for joining. Like,
Thanks.
unless otherwise I'm hopping around, otherwise it would be much better if I'm not hopping around. But sorry, I have to do that. Otherwise, they'll just cut and go. Sorry about that. Yeah, otherwise I had really good time, and it's really informative. Like today's all the topics are kind of I think Vipul and Apus talk are slightly related, and very informative, and all other talks are really good. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining and sharing your knowledge. So we'll catch up
Thank
in the
you.
next meetup then.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Kiran.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Kiran.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
yeah,
Bye.
Bye.
yeah.
Bye.
Bye. See you all
Bye.
again.